Game development is not an easy task to undergo. There's a reason why you see many cases of former game developers on the news, because they've become tired of the whole game creating gig and quit their jobs to live in peace in the mountains until the game publishers knock on their door with an arrest warrant. It's back to your PC, it is sunshine. The task of developing a game from beginning to end is very time consuming and tedious, especially if you're the only one who's working on the game. Throughout the past few years, many solo created games have gone on to spawn massive fan bases and turn into sizable franchises. You've got Undertale, Five Nights at Freddy's, Red Dead Redemption, and FIFA. These games have turned paupers to princes and neat to neat. If your game blows up, you've basically got yourself set for life. There's no need to move into another career. Just quit your normal job and live the rest of your life responding to negative Steam reviews, calling the person who left the review a brainlet who doesn't appreciate the amount of work that goes into such a mundane, heart-wrenchingly difficult task. All of the games that I've stated before are highly profitable franchises that have become hellspawn for some of the worst that the internet has to offer, but there's one game that's in the shadows, a game that's been in development for longer than Grand Theft Auto and is still not released. You'd think that a game that has been in development for that long would surely be contender for Game of the Year. And you'd be absolutely right. This game's a solid 100 out of 10. Excellent out of 4 stars. So good that my PC excreted a liquid from the power supply and is dripping absolutely everywhere. That's just the cup that I've spilled. Before I get sidetracked for the umpteenth time, the game that I'm talking about today is another one of those anime games, but this time, instead of being the recipient of a cute anime girl's love, you are the dealer of the love to your supposed boyfriend, only you're making absolute sure that no one can actually talk or interact with him whatsoever. I'm of course talking about Yandere Simulator. A yandere is described as a term for a person who's initially loving and caring to someone that they like a lot until their romantic love and devotion becomes feisty and mentally destructive in nature through either overprotectiveness, violence, brutality, or all three. Yandere characters in anime tend to be the ones that are extremely overprotective of their senpai to the point that they will go to extreme lengths to make sure that they're the only ones who are actually in love with the intended victim. I'm going to be using victim instead of senpai because in this case that's pretty much what the character is. Yandere characters have been seemingly popular over the past few years. You've got Yuna Gasai from Future Diary, Shion Sonozaki and Reina Ryugu from Higurashi. To be honest though, all the girls qualifying that franchise, they're all fucking nutters, I tell ya! And you got Sayaka Miki from Madoka Magica. These characters in their respective series show obsessive levels of love towards a specific character and will go to mental lengths in order to ensure that their love is the only one that they need, sometimes ending up killing other characters in order to get their way. Someone looks in the general direction of my boyfriend? Dead! Someone sends a text message to a group chat that my boyfriend is in? Dead! Someone falls over a balcony trying to reach their house and the place that they'd slipped in had been scraped by my boyfriend when he tripped over at the same place 16 decades ago? Dead! It's the obsessive nature of these characters that cause them to be quite popular with audiences. No matter how many people try to claim that they prefer dojiko girls or cat girls, it's the unhinged violent yandere girls that tend to be exceedingly popular with weeb audiences because they provided, or used to provide, a different type of personality to the type of girls that are normally seen in anime, with tsundere and yandere characters from all sorts of Japanese media constantly polling at the top of the best girl charts. It's not just anime and manga that these types of girls are popularized. In some cases, actual real-life incidents occur with yanderes, and these are told on websites such as 2chan and 8chan. These stories tend to be popular on YouTube, with creepypasta YouTubers making videos highlighting the scariest and the best stories involving this character type from 2chan. The moral of the story, as a wise man once enunciated, do not stick your dick in crazy. Now, seeing just how popular yanderes are, and in a society where YouTube was gaining traction extremely fast and people really seem to love those simulator type games, can't wait to load up my copy of Farming Simulator 2018 on the PC. One person who went by the name of Yandere Dev, going down the same route as PlayerUnknown and his game Unground's Playown Bats, decided to mix the genres together and create Yandere Simulator. A game where you played a yandere girl as she tried to win her senpai's love, but they're pesky opponents that are hindering your progress, so you gotta eliminate them in the most ambiguous way possible. When the game loads up, you are treated to a nice looking, pleasant menu screen with a titular character, Yandere-chan, staring blankly into the distance and idling like any normal person would do. Oh my. The objective of the game is made absolutely clear from the very beginning, and that is to win the love of your victim. How you actually accomplish this is completely unknown to me, to you, or to anyone really, not least to Dev, but in this school of witchcraft and wizardry, there are many rivals you must overcome in order to successfully win the love of your victim. Well, there's only one, but she's a very formidable rival and one that you have to use all of your intellect in order to overcome this looming threat. When you load into the game for the first time, you're given a deadline. This deadline is one that you have to be extremely wary of, as once that deadline is hit, you have lost your victim forever as he's gone out with your rival instead of you. Game over! Now in your well-modeled and highly optimized room, you have a shrine dedicated to your victim. I'm tired of saying victim, I'm just gonna call him Bill. You have a shrine that's dedicated to Bill, with various items of paraphernalia either belonging to you or belonging to Bill. For example, an apple that you spend copious amounts of hours licking the tooth marks off like a normal functioning human being. You also have your wardrobe. Seeing as Unity and MMD don't seem to mix as well as people like to think they do, everyone is relegated to the same schoolwear and not a single thing is changed about them, but you know what you can change? Your underwear, your tighty-whitey, you can't say that, your multicolored and multicultural pants. These give you special abilities, or they up your abilities by a fair bit depending on what type of underwear you end up donning. But all this talking has made you late for school, you naughty girl! Get out of the house right now! Now you can choose the healthier option, which is cycling to school with bike handling that would make insomniac games seethe in their seats. Or you can just teleport right in front of your school gates. For the sake of time, we'll choose the teleport option, and look at that, the school's right there. It's super early in the morning, but this is the optimum time for you to watch everyone walk in from their daily commute from the abyss. Watch as your classmates walk past you with a blank expression on their face and slow down walk cycle animation as the pleasant music plays in the background, and look who's there! It's Bill! You try and go within 2 meters of him though, and you can't. You have a panic attack right then and there, and if you linger for too long, he starts to notice that you're near him. In the school there are different classes and clubs and classrooms you can join, all of them headed by a ghost-like figure who you have to consult before joining a club. You go into your daily class routine and you take your classes. With each lesson you learn, you can up your stats in a specific area. How you use these stats to your advantage is not made clear because the game makes you a brainlet from the beginning. At the end of the school day, you can choose to linger outside school for a little longer before you go home and have a good night's sleep. The end. Now comes the part where you start yandereing. Your mission is to win Bill's affection and ensure that you, my friend, you are the only one that Bill can fall for. How do you do that? Eliminating the opposition. When you walk into the school, there are a couple of weapons on the floor. You'd think that people would notice that there are chainsaws and syringes and swords on the floor in front of them, but the AI is too stupid to notice until you pick it up and all of a sudden you're on 5 stars and there are police running after you. You have one main rival you have to battle with in order to make Bill fall in love with you before the dreaded deadline hits, and you've got a plethora of ways you can eliminate her using the school to your potential. You can trick her into electrocuting herself, you can drop a weight on her and give her permanent brain damage, you can set her on fire, you can push her off a building, you can get her to push herself off a building, or you can play it straight and run her through and through, but make sure not to do it when a teacher's watching you or else you can get apprehended or worse. Expelled. One scenario has you play out a Yakuza-style kidnapping and brainwash her or your other victim into following your orders and doing obscene things such as killing other classmates and then killing themselves. You can gain supernatural powers and dismember your rivals all in the name of true love. Yandere Simulator initially came to light at around 2013 when the developer, Alex, pitched the idea of a game making fun of the Yandere trope seen in anime to the V board. Now, V is full to the brim with contrarians who hate everything and anything if it isn't made by Sony Computer Entertainment, but the people on that thread in particular seem to unanimously agree that this was a cool idea and could work really well if made into a full game. Boy do they regret ever giving Alex the validation to pursue that game idea. Alex then got to work on Yandere Simulator, a simulator for all the thirsty neckbeards around the world to live out their school life as a Yandere character and win the love of their Bill. The game hit the big time in an extremely short amount of time thanks to YouTubers like Markiplier and PewDiePie making extensive playthroughs of the game in its extremely early access state, and people ate it up. Everyone saw the video and the game and went, "Anime girls killing each other? Boy, does that sound like a snack!" And saw that the game is available for free, and you can donate for faster work done or more features to be added down the line. So the internet did what the internet does and threw money at a stupid concept once again. Now that I've given you some extensive context to the game and what made it so popular, this is the part of the video where I break down the dev's fall from grace. Not that he had much grace to fall down on. The first downside to the game is the fact that the dev is too ambitious and pretentious. I won't go into detail about his backstory because there are already a ton of videos about this, but I'll summarize his backstory in one quick segment headed by a glass of ale.
What you're about to witness is a terrifying battle of ideologies expressed in text format. Now, I must warn you, the following confrontation contains very aggressive, provocative, and sweary vernacular. And if you're not a fan of either of those statements, then too bad, because I have to read this wall of text and I'm not getting paid to... Oh, fuck off! Chaotic method, you stupid goddamn fucking elitist snob, shut the goddamn fucking hell up and get the fucking hell out of here. You think you're being contrary to whatever someone else says does. It's going to make you look smarter and make them look stupid. You think by criticizing something that is popular, that it's going to make you look like you are intellectually superior and not appreciating something that has mass appeal and is celebrated by most people. You're a goddamn fucking moron who tries to make himself look smart by attacking other things because you have no intelligence or your own, and there's no other way to project intelligence other than insult things that other people appreciate in order to make them feel bad and make them look like some kind of enlightened connoisseur. Now shut the goddamn fucking hell up and get the fuck out of my chat room! Other people are trying to enjoy the fucking movie, you idiot! Why the fuck did I do that?
But one clear thing you should take away from him is the fact that he has a massive ego. Before Yandere Simulator, there was a game called Lunasari, which was a game about a girl who thinks that some people who are living in the world don't deserve to live because they're sinners. So instead of seeing a psychiatrist or a therapist to diagnose her utter batshit ideals, she kills everybody she sees because Death the Boogeyman told her to do it. AAA gameplay! He sends this proof of concept to the programmer of Skullgirls known as Mike Z, and he criticizes his game. He's not too impressed by the edge fest that's been handed to him. Now, Alex doesn't take criticism of this game too well, but okay, it's cool. He's young and inexperienced. He'll mature as he gets older. Yandere Simulator is way too bloated. It's gotten to the point that I don't even think Alex knows what the hell the genre of the game is meant to be. It's a hack and slash stealth combat based psychological thriller Steam tag bait game. It's just load in, walk around for a bit, kill someone and run! Walk around for a bit, join a club, notice Bill loitering around the main area of the building, look all shifty. Then kill someone and run! It's essentially a Hitman game with Yakuza sprinkled in, and Alex said himself he even wanted more combat-based mechanics in the game with 10 fully fleshed out opponents preventing you from ever winning Bill's love. The developer lacks focus on what his game is trying to be, which makes the experience vapid and unenjoyable. It's like he wanted GTA levels of interaction but only managed to make a cheap knockoff that you find on the 5th page of the Google Play Store. I understand trying to make your game as long as possible, but it doesn't really work when the type of things you're adding are so wildly different to the base game that is not even a Yandere Simulator and it's just a Gary's Mod anime girl server. It doesn't help that he's not actually focusing on fixing the game. He's literally just adding bullshit game modes that have nothing to do with the outer story of the game, which just adds to the amount of time taken developing this game. This game has been in development for well over 5 years at this point, and it's not looking like it's finishing anytime soon. And this is despite Alex receiving well over 100 grand from Patreon, YouTube and Twitch that could easily have gone to hiring some people or someone to help with the game's development. Oh wait! He did do that! So a couple of years ago, Alex was approached by a company called TinyBuild. If you've watched any of my old videos, you'll note that TinyBuild are a moderately sizable company and they're notable for financing and publishing indie games that have seen varying degrees of success. But they're a company, and do you know what companies bring to a project? They bring a lot of bread. You just need to be able to supply the butter or else the bread would become burnt toast with shit on it. TinyBuild approached Alex and saw the game in its current state, all weird and MMD looking. So they gave a stunning suggestion to Alex. How about we give you one of our minions to help you develop the game, and we'll help finance it so it's actually released this century. Do we have a deal? So they kicked out one of their developers and handed them over to Alex for him to do as he pleases, which was of course to help him work on the code for his game. The dev was probably fine with working on the game until he actually saw the code. What is this? The code was a nightmare. It looked like the work of someone who'd taken one beginner lesson on Code Academy and declared himself the next player unknown. Summarized on Reddit, some of the functions that he had put in the code were unnecessary and just helped to bloat the game into oblivion. He stated that the update function has nearly 2,000 lines of code. Each character has that function running in their code. Multiply 2000 with the number of students that are in the game and you have the amount of lines in code being executed per frame. For each character that's been added, an extra 2000 lines are added. The most recent update to the game added 30,000 more lines of code that it has to run every single frame. Consider yourselves lucky that your computer hasn't nuked your neighborhood into Morrowind. This was what the tiny build guy had to deal with. Despite this, he took on the challenge of developing the game properly so that the code wasn't spaghetti. No ifs, no elses, no buts. Seemed to be going well, then suddenly Alex posts to his patrons that he's been dropped by tinybuild in this statement. So now let us quickly dissect some of this statement.
For a long time, I was extremely reluctant to consider the possibility of bringing another programmer on board the project.
Oh gee, I wonder why.
I didn't want to risk losing weeks or months of my time teaching someone how the systems work, how to modify various aspects of the game, where important files are located, etc, etc.
Honestly, you'd be losing a little more than a few weeks or months of your time with the code that you had going. You'd probably need a few generations in order to walk someone through where all the magic is supposed to happen. And considering how slow the development of the game is, I honestly don't see the point in not bringing in another programmer, because you could have had a cleaner build of the game released in a much shorter time period than this acid flip piece of shit.
I didn't want to risk the programmer modifying my code in any ways that make it alien and foreign to me, impeding my ability to make progress on the game.
Well, of course hiring a programmer who's better than you in design would make it seem a little foreign to you. He'd be teaching you more than you'd be teaching him. He tends to repeat himself regularly during the statement, so I'll summarize the events that happened according to him. The programmer who was sent by tinybuild rewrote the entire code of the game from scratch. He saw firsthand just how spaghetti the codetti was and fixed the issue to make the code actually usable. This did not go down well with the Yandere dev, as he couldn't read the code. It looked clean. It's not meant to look clean, it's meant to look dark and gritty and messy. That's more like it. Long story short, tinybuild dropped him. Even though he likes to claim that he was the one who dropped them, they dropped him.
Whoa, that's like fucking mean.
It's now approaching 5 years since word of Yandere Simulator has spread across the internet, and what you're seeing is the game in its current state. Now, does this look like a game that has been 5 years in the making? In a video and subsequent Patreon post, Alex made references to other games that have been in development for a long time, such as Cuphead, and cited those as an excuse as to why his game is taking so long to be made. Now, I don't know about you, but this game is certainly no Cuphead. It's been 5 years and the game still looks like an MMD animation mixed in with miniclip free online flash game. It doesn't look good. Granted, it looks better than how it did when it first came out, but this just isn't possible. Alex stated himself multiple times that the models that they're using for the game are not final and they will be replaced with other models that have been made from the ground up down the line. It doesn't really seem like these models are going to be made anytime soon if you're continuing to make animations on your model that's just an edited version of this asset you can find on the Unity store. And wait, you can also find the entire model of the school that they're using on the Unity store as well. I wouldn't be too vexed by this at all if there was at least some progress being made into making independent assets and models. Like take PUBG for example. That game was a 100% bona fide asset flip. It's like loading into Unreal Engine the first time and finding out there's a store full of items and then copying and pasting them everywhere. 10 out of 10 game design, Kotaku would be proud. But as the game got very large in a short period of time, Bluehole Entertainment focused their energies on making their own original assets for the game, with maps being created from scratch without them buying anything from the Unreal store. This, on the other hand, has been 5 years in the making, thousands of dollars in the bank, and not one asset of the game is 100% original and built from the ground up. Yandere-chan's living room is stolen, and the pool in the school was literally stolen from a porn game. Each of the rivals, which funnily enough only one has been not complete but complete enough to be in the game, are literally the default model but with a wacky hairstyle to make it like the animes you've been watching on the TV. When developing a game, it's paramount that you maintain some sort of professionality when in the public eye, no matter how much of a meme your game is supposed to be. From the turbulent development of Yandere Simulator, this is a prime example of how not to develop your game. The image of your game is shaped mostly by the people behind it. If it's a single developer or a small team whose leader is front and center of the game, like again PUBG and even Undertale, you've got to make sure that your own image is squeaky clean, because if your image is bad, your game is bad, even if your game is good. The image that Alex had given himself has been less than stellar. with people who have volunteered to help work on the game documenting a bad experience with Alex. According to this anecdote, there was another instance where a friend of his wanted to join as a volunteer to work on Yandere Simulator. He wanted to extend his services and Alex seemed incredibly interested and asked him to draw a portrait of one of the rivals. The artist then sent his work the same night to Alex and was met with an unprofessional and incredibly rude response, with Alex telling him that his art looks awful and something he'd never want to have put anywhere near his game. That's something that you shouldn't say about someone's art. I'm not trying to go for a gamers rise up union. There's no criticism of the art in that statement. He just told him it looks crap and told him to beat it. The issue continues with Alex responding to a person wanting to volunteer as a voice actor, stating that he's very tired of hearing from inexperienced amateurs who waste his time, and the fact that they are all 12 to 13-year-olds with crappy microphones. With a reputation like yours at this moment in time, why would anyone even consider going for a voice acting gig with your game? Now, this photo is an official merchandise photo, and look at her face and tell me that she wants to be there at this moment in time. For the record, the current voice actors and actresses of the game, however, are pretty decent and do a good job with the stuff that they're given. With the amount of money that's being pocketed each month on Patreon, you'd think that they get paid. Well, I don't actually know. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But that doesn't take away from the fact that Alex's attitude is horribly toxic and bitter, and one that shouldn't be allowed in this kind of environment. But wait. There's more. This is going off on a bit of a tangent, but an artist who works or works for Alex was called out for tracing a lot of her art, and she has vehemently denied that she has traced them, deciding to flag all of the comments trying to expose her. Some of the examples have been recovered and I'll leave you to decide. After multiple posts calling him out in the comment section for slacking off his game, slagging off his fans and slapping a big fat L on his reputation, he made the decision to PewDiePie 2014 his comments. No more were people allowed to send messages or comments on his video, because if you tried to, you'd be banned extremely quickly. He cited the reasons of his comment section closing as too many edgy teenage kids.
And here we have a comment that you've made quite recently that appears to be an edgy childish comment.
Really gets the noggin jogging, really initializes my cranium. He also cites constant spreading of misinformation and outright lies. Well, previously he made a statement about how he's not actively moderating his Discord and subreddit. He is merely acting as an owner by name.
And here you have him actively moderating his Discord and subreddit. Heavily.
Really gets your gish galloping. His paranoid banning habits on Discord and Reddit aren't a really good look, especially if it's over completely mundane things like asking for a new update to the game. All of Alex's wrongdoings must have been enough for some websites to handle, as his official blog on WordPress where he posts his game update got suspended very recently. I guess they got tired of waiting for the game to come out, so they decided to terminate it before it became terminal. It's gotten to the point that the modding community is better than the game itself. I used to be skeptical of all the new videos being posted about Yandere Simulator on YouTube, then I looked into it and realized that they're all mods. The modding community is doing a much better job at fleshing out the game than the game developer. How has this happened? He then goes on to denounce his own fans, the very people that gave his game the popularity it needed to rake in over $6,000 in revenue. I promised myself I wouldn't write myself to the end of the world and back in the making of this video, but here we are. The turbulent tale of Yandere Simulator and its flawed beginnings, middles and ends. Who knows, maybe the game will be complete sometime this generation, but I wouldn't hold your breath with the horrid reputation that the developer has, and the aura around the game being extremely negative. It's weird being in the camp of people who used to look forward to what the game has to offer several years ago, but it doesn't seem like the developer is growing up and maturing with his game. He's notorious for not taking criticism too well and resorts to deleting videos about him, so if you're watching this now, yay, I'm still alive! Before I wrap up this video, I'd like to thank all the lovely voice actors who've helped contribute their vocal cords to this video, and all the body actors who've contributed their body cords to this video. I do have a Patreon if you want more frequent videos and higher budgeted edits, and I also have a Discord server where you can chat with me and get work in progress of new videos and art. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new, and comment what kind of features you wanted in the game. Links to all the sources and information will be found in the description, and I thank thee for taking the time to feast your eyes on this video. I'll now leave you with some good old controversial Yandere Simulator posts.
My penis was cringing for the entirety of that scene.
Go fucking kill yourself, dumb shit.
A girl's breasts are like water balloons, full of milk. If you stab a girl in the breast, milk spills out.
Fat
bet, check, turn. Fuck!
Wowee, we're back at it. Yandere Simulator. Man, I haven't talked about this game in over a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, it was a harsh year and a half. I didn't finish 2019. 2019 finished me. Wow, so much has changed since then. You've changed. I've changed. My shirts have changed. Buy my merch. My beard has changed. My glasses just changed. My shirt just changed. That was a lie. If you think for a second that you know me, that will be the last mistake of your life. But first, a word from today's sponsor. Me and my goddamn shirt. That's right, I have another shirt. Hell yeah. This one has a print on the front and the back. That's fucking hard. The print on the back is literally just the back of the design. I'm the only person who finds that funny. Why does it say 200k club? Because this shirt's limited time only. Not a limited time discount, limited time of existence. Just like us. You have 7 days to buy it before it's gone forever. Please buy it. 100 million people have already lived and died, and guess what? They didn't have this shit. That's right, this makes you immortal. Literally a god. Problems with the Mexican cartel? Bam, solved. They're now your best friends. 200,000 of debt, not a problem. Spilled some OJ, mop that shit up. Wife left you, this shirt won't. Keep your head up, Ken, your crown's falling. Just being stabbed? Wearing this shirt is marginally better than being naked. It still counts. What are you waiting for? Buy the shirt now. Buy it, dude. Seriously, help me. I have my family. Please, dude, buy it. I'm on my knees. The sale's already started. You're running out of time. They're gonna execute them on the tri-state lines. Anyway, buy my shirt. It's limited time only. Also, it was made by Leighton, who made the charity tee, so if you like that, you'll like this one too. Buy my shirt. Thank you. I've somewhat been meaning to make a follow-up video to my last one for quite some time now, but there was one glaring obstacle in the way, being that there wasn't exactly a whole lot of content to critique of his, and not because he suddenly became good at anything that he does, but more because there wasn't really any work for me to critique at all. But I think enough time has passed and events have happened for me to come back and revisit this topic and say proudly, with all my heart, that Asana's, soon guys, she'll be in the game soon, trust me. This is the final stretch. I know I've said this before, but this time I'm real, alright? Look me in the eyes. She's coming out soon. Something I do want to start with is somewhat of an amendment to my previous video by talking about the game itself instead of what I did, which was kind of like glossing over it as more of a product of code than as an interactive, enjoyable experience, which is the whole point of a fucking game. There's two things I want to specifically talk about. The first being the implementation of an idea that acts as the core foundation for the entire game, and secondly, the focus of its development. Yandere Dev has stated before that he envisions Yandere Simulator as the almost as complex combination of Hitman and Persona. Now, while this is quite possibly the dumbest fucking thing I've heard about this game, and I actually made it sound better, he didn't use the word envision, he just stated it like a fact, but it is true that Yandere Dev has attempted to make Yandere Simulator a combination of those two games. It raises the question, why hasn't a game similar to this been made before? Well, apart from the whole murdering children thing, I'm coming back to this, which could just be avoided by taking Persona elements to a Hitman universe instead of the other way around. It inherently introduces a problem, being that, believe it or not, Hitman and Persona are different games and work differently at a foundational level. Hitman is a game where you blend in through costumes and faceless crowds to eliminate assassination targets in one of a few finely tuned ways that have been carefully and precisely designed in a short, several-minute-long enclosed level. Persona is a turn-based RPG that gives deep and expansive character development to a select few students in several wide-open locations over an ample period of time. For God's sake, time is the most important part of the story. Hitman has almost no dialogue when playing the game, and in Persona, dialogue is basically one of the core mechanics. There's so many words. How do you take these concepts that inherently clash with one another and combine them seamlessly into the same game? Well, the answer will shock you, and it will shock me, because I haven't figured it out yet, and neither has Yandere Dev. Nobody fucking knows. The students in the school are designed to be different from one another if you just ignore that they're all from the same template, and really flex your imagination, whether it be what they like, where they walk, what they look like, their cringy fucking names. First off, the last name, Kankoshi. Misspelt, it's Kangoshi, but that's fine. It's not fine. It's really not fine at all, but I'll ignore that. The first name, however, Nasu, does not mean nurse. That is Nasu, with like a little tilde thing on the A, and I don't know if it's a restriction of what he's using to name these people, but he just either forgot it or it's just not possible, and that would have been fine if it just incorrectly translated to nurse, but it correctly translates to eggplant. Yeah, Nasu means eggplant. Nasu means nurse. You had 2 chances to get it right, and you fucked up both of them. That's pretty impressive. Anyway, back to the topic of NPCs having individuality. This is a good thing, because in a social sim, it's very nice to feel like you're talking to a character and learning about them, rather than pressing A at an eggplant with a face. But the Hitman series has a different way of approaching NPCs, mainly being that they are all part of a faceless crowd and you have very little options to interact with them, most of those options resulting in murder. And maybe now you can see the problem. It is quite physically impossible to have NPCs deep enough for a social sim while also still be disposable enough for a stealth assassination game without a massive team behind creating these NPCs that have a lot of experience with world building. It's just not going to happen. The most that you can interact with another human in this game so far is to compliment them, beg them for something, ask them to follow you, or fucking kill them. Instead, the most that you get in the way of interesting characters is a short 2-sentence description of their entire fucking life. So most of the non-essential NPCs, the ones that just fill out the roster of a club or what have you, are just dead content already. They just serve no purpose other than to be security cameras with different colored hair. It feels very similar to Watch Dogs, where they were very clearly given requirements for development, one of them being you can see into the lives of all these characters, but they all have to be able to die, so they just programmed in an auto-generation thing for character traits, and it doesn't make any sense, creating contradictions all the fucking time, which is off-putting and world-breaking, to say the least. And to be fair, it was worse in the first game, and even then, it's still worse than the handcrafted or the handmade descriptions in Yandere Simulator. But it gives the same, it gives like the same idea, the same feeling, where every character has to be unique, but they all have to still be vulnerable to my gun move. This bridges me to my next critique, being, what the fuck the fuck is all of this? What is all of this doing here? I don't get it. What is this? Where am I? Who are you? What do you want? What's the point of you? Who am I? Oh god. Based off both how I criticize this game continuously and look over the age of 10, I am clearly not a fan of this game. So when I booted it up and went to look at, you know, what do I do? And I couldn't find a single fucking objective. It's just a sandbox. It is still just a sandbox with nothing to do. There are currently 18 forms of elimination in the game right now, either completed or in various stages of development. There are 10 different clubs, multiple different mechanics, a bunch of different students, and so much more I can't even go into. And I can say for absolute certain that if Osana gets released, the moment that she gets dropped, the moment the update comes out, most of this content will be buggy, exploitable, unbalanced, broken, or just dead on arrival. Why is that, you ask? Well, to cite my predecessors, and I am including myself in this list, I must say, it's because Osana is not in the game, and I know what you're thinking, oh wow, original criticism, but I'm being completely genuinely serious, just hear me out. Costume change. As of right now, the game is just a sandbox with no objectives and none of the core characters being implemented apart from your love interest and, you know, the character you play as. And unfortunately, this means that the game has no way of being actually tested in the way that it's going to be played in its final version. Yandere Dev has said before that Asana and the future rivals are essentially just iterations of each other at a higher difficulty. Unfortunately, this means that the game loop is entirely based around something that doesn't exist, cannot be tested, and can't act as the center that future development gravitates around. Imagine, as an example, Dark Souls 3, except we're not calling it Dark Souls 3, it's its own game. There's no Souls-born games, none of that. We're just calling this game Soul Man, and it's the first game of its kind. Yeah. In Soul Man, there are various forms of combat: ranged, magic, prep, and all forms of melee weaponry for the refined gentleman. The game in its beta stage is just testing around. A bonfire, some enemies, and weapons. Now, you can test weapons and spells against enemies, you can test movement and all that. You feel that things are balanced. But it's actually a hollow success. Excellent pun. Yeah, hell yeah, that's what's up. Because it's in a vacuum, it doesn't represent the game itself, just some of the building blocks. Because of this, any successful testing should be taken with a grain of salt, because it only gives you a general idea of how the game will work. But the developer does not do this. He spends months or years developing the trees and styles of combat, adding weapon after weapon, spell after spell. Once they have been worked on and polished to an almost sickening extent, an update that includes a new area has been released. After like 6 years, they finally get a taste of what the game was meant to be in the first area. And they realize that prayer is bad, as in it sucks. It's worse than everything else. There's no reason to use it, maybe as a joke. Also, most magic is kind of bad as well, so go fuck yourself. Back to the real world, Dark Souls 3 was a game made by people who knew what they were fucking doing. And it wasn't the first game of its kind, it was the third. Fourth, technically, maybe fifth if you count it that way. And it wasn't even developed in such a shitty way that didn't even account for the future. This was the third iteration of this series. They knew what they were doing, and on release, it was still rife with game balancing issues, exploits, and just dead content. It's still like that now. Magic in the series has either been the most powerful thing that just destroys everything else, or weaker than any stick off the curb. Prayer has always sucked. It just always has. It's always going to. The only Soulsborne type game-ish that balances everything correctly is Sekiro, because it doesn't have phantoms, or PvP, or magic, or customizable weapons. It just has the weapon arts, and that's it. This is just a fact about how games work. At some point in the game's lifespan or its development, there is going to be a strategy or mechanic, a technique or item that is just objectively better than other things. Sometimes objectively better than basically everything else. Every game suffers this. Some more than others. Wow, what high-level counterplay. He could see that coming. That was fair. That was fair. Look, that was fair, okay? Yandere Simulator has a billion things all surface deep because Alex just thought to himself, hey, that would be cool if I added that, and then he did. This has happened so many times, and it's going to be a balancing nightmare. Speaking of Alex adding things to the game because he thinks they're cool and no other reason, Snap Mode. Hi, it's 11 PM and Yandere, they've just released the new build, the one that has the new Snap Mode in it, and while messing around with it, I've kind of discovered something quite noticeably weird about it, noticeably wrong. I'm not actually filming with this camera, I'm actually passing it through HDMI into my capture card so I can capture this in real time, because I actually need to be able to do that. That's probably disorienting, I'm going to stop. Of course it lags the game, why wouldn't it? The game wants me to kill him, right? Leave me alone. But that would require playing the game. So I'm gonna fuck off and read this. It's called Dark Souls Beyond the Grave. Very good book, I've been quite enjoying it. Haven't found the time to read. Honestly, I've been too busy with work. Alright. I would say my only criticism of that is that there's too much interactivity and it's too quick. I would rather it give me more time to do nothing so I can read my book more. But apart from that, great gameplay feature. Really like how you don't actually have to do anything and it's fucking pointless. I really like that, honestly. I think that's the best part of it. Oh, the game crashed. Maybe on release, dismembering and transporting with a heavy case, even though it has requirements, will be infinitely easier than carrying a dead body. And I say maybe, because we'll never fucking know. So it's bloated in the sense that Alex is going to have to remove a lot of the fat. He's going to have to trim a lot of things, except I don't believe for a second he's going to do that, because I believe that Alex will not remove features or mechanics if he himself is proud of them, or they fit his anime viewpoint of the world. But even then, even if all of that was trimmed, the game still has too much stuff. For example, in the game world, there is an anime or show called Magical Girl Pretty Miyuki. I think that's the name, I don't remember. And it's basically the stock standard magical girl anime that then goes into an Evangelion twist. And I'll get to how I know that in a bit, but I'm not lying to you here. In universe, this show has a game, multiple different characters with backstories, and 3 fucking paragraphs on the wiki about Alex talking like how he would structure the show. How the show would be structured in universe. I'm fucking done. This is a direct quote from the wiki, by the way. According to Yandere Dev, he imagines the show being like Evangelion. It starts out as a typical show with all the usual tropes, and then things start to get weird. What the fuck? You're not making an anime, you're making a video game. Most of this stuff about whatever is completely pointless. There's no reason to have this in the game. The more I read into the completely superficial parts of this game's development, the more confused I am, the more pain I feel. In comparison to all of this stuff, the plan for the game's future development is basically non-existent. It's pretty much just a list of things Yandere Dev eventually wants to do with the game. This thing has a fucking, like, character arcs and shit. I genuinely recommend you go and read every part of the wiki page for this anime girl thing, because it's so genuinely intriguing. Not because of the content, but the fact that any of this has graced my eyes. He stated an in-world reason as to why that one of the wands from the show was in the drama club, like stating that last year they adapted one of the episodes or something into a show and they got rid of the costume, but the wand is still there, which is way more detail than was necessary, with the appropriate level of detail being it's a TV show and they're a drama club. That's it. That's completely sufficient. The best part for me was 2 years ago when somebody asked specifically about fan participation for the show's development or whatever. Like, real-life fans participating for the fake show. And he responded saying he's put a lot of thought into this. And I don't need to tell you that he shouldn't have, because, you know, the game in its current state isn't exactly what I would call near completion. In his response, he talks about the nuances of how they get their powers from admiration rather than attraction, hence excluding swimsuit models and porn stars from being magical girls or whatever, because people are simply attracted to them rather than admiring them. All of this to talk about an example of a character that exists who is a, quote, a busty swimsuit model, but also has people admiring them and isn't getting power just because she's attractive. And when he posted this, you could not save the game. There was not a functioning save button. Like, you couldn't do that. You couldn't functionally save when he said this. And he's talking about fucking busty swimsuit models and the differences between whether or not somebody can get power from attraction or admiration. I'm going to end something. Something's life ends with me. All this mind-numbingly extensive world building for a tiny, insignificant part of the in-game universe, with the only real in-game content that matters to come from it being the augmented reality game that does basically fucking nothing. It's just there because Alex likes writing things and not thinking about how the game is actually going to function. The wiki says that the people playing this game act as a threat, that if you don't clear them, it'll be harder to kill and transport a body in that location without being seen. Except, how is that a threat if they clear it by themselves in like 10 seconds? It's not even in a secluded spot, it's in the middle of a hallway. When would you ever kill someone here? Ignore that I've changed clothes again. I'm not doing this just to promote my merch. I'm recording these on different days, and also I'm promoting my merch. Buy my merch. This is just one of the many things Alex has done to give a student a schedule, I guess to make it harder to kill certain targets at certain times, and we've seen that he's wanted to do this for a while with Osana, to artificially make it harder to kill her, and in other games, I wouldn't really have an issue with this. Most people wouldn't even notice it, but that's because usually it's surrounded by an actually good experience. Now, that's just kind of a theory, how Yandere Dev kind of only adds things because he thinks they're cool or they logically make sense, rather than balancing or for the betterment of the health of certain mechanics in the game, except for this video, where he uses Hitman as an example for something in which he says it's strange that he can enter the level with guns and explosives, but weird that he can't enter it with a screwdriver, a household object, where you use the screwdriver for a certain elimination method. It's such a hassle to get to, why can't I just start with it? You already know from the tone of this video that even if you know nothing about Hitman, I'm not gonna let that slide. There's something wrong with that. And there is. That elimination method where you have to have a screwdriver is the best elimination method for all of them. Okay, let's break it down real quick. To put it simply, to eliminate someone with a gun, explosive, or knife, something you can bring into the level that isn't a screwdriver, you need to have line of sight, usually have a disguise at some point, they need to be alone, you need to pull off their guard, either distract him, or knock him unconscious, or kill him. You need to basically just wait until they're by themselves. And even then, it gives you less points, whereas the screwdriver elimination method requires you have knowledge of the map, knowing that you've played it previously. You need to know where to find the screwdriver, you still need to have line of sight, you still need to disguise, but you don't need to dump the bodies, and you get more points because it's an elimination method. Also, something that he didn't mention in that video is that that method he's describing, that he would want to be easier because it's such a hassle, is the best elimination method in the fucking game. The reason it's such a good elimination method is because the weighting, like the difficulty, is placed on the preparation. You need to know where to use the screwdriver, and you need to know where the screwdriver is. Now, just to prove him wrong, I bought the game, the whole $60 expansion pack, just to play a single level twice, which I did. Once, killing them with guns and whatever, just the normal playstyle, and the second one with the screwdriver. And despite never playing Hitman 2 or Hitman or whatever the hell it's called ever before in my life, I got the highest rating and I think 160,000 points with the screwdriver method. And it was fucking easy because I knew where to find the screwdriver. If I didn't, it would have taken a lot longer. Hence the balancing point. But with just the guns, I only got 2 stars and almost like half the points that I did because it's sloppier and it was easier and it was shorter. Hence the screwdriver balancing thing. It's so strange because this is like the very bare minimum case study for balancing. Like, something that gives you more takes longer. That's pretty much it. So I don't know why he finds it strange how long it takes. What? Is he complaining that he already knows where the screwdriver is and he just doesn't want to run there? Because I don't think balancing the game around people that have played it 100 times is a very good idea either.
Brain blast!
Oh, I'm so confused. Am I going fucking insane? Am I the only person here who understands balancing? And that's pretty much the issue. Yandere Dev isn't even thinking of balancing. He's just thinking, oh, a screwdriver is easier to get than a gun, therefore I should be able to get the screwdriver, without thinking about what that would do for the game and how it would be played. But yeah, other than those tiny, minor issues that won't cause ripples in the foundation of the game, yeah, fuck it. Who cares? Just have the screwdriver. At least his game's going to be good. Having a free roam hub you return to across multiple days with RPG elements and player choice, leading to a certain strategy the player would want to implement, feels a whole lot more restrictive when you can only do those things when the game specifically says you can. In Hitman, since there are no prerequisites like a strength stat to open a door, for example, every option is open to you, you just have to find it. Plans can change on the fly, and you may not even know how you want to eliminate someone until you're right next to them and you can see the layout of where they're standing. At that point, you may start to see options, environmental dangers, who's around him, who can see him, that kind of stuff. If you see a time to strike, you can create a moment where you sneak in someplace, you lure a guard away, you eliminate the target, knock the dude out when he gets back, and you stash the bodies and run. You can't do that in Yandere Simulator because the guard in that analogy is a conglomerate of 5 different students, and running doesn't exactly work when you have an exam the next day. I don't feel like I have to say this, but just for the sake of covering all bases, I'm just going to point out that there is a very obvious reason as to why the levels and the gameplay is designed like that, why it's short, simple, and sweet, because that's how the game works at its best. Ignoring the obvious problems caused by having to return to the scene of the crime, something that doesn't happen in stealth assassination games for a reason, Alex seems intent on just placing a shit ton of people next to the rival if he doesn't want you to kill them at that time, which can sometimes be changed with certain stats, being part of a club, befriending students, etc., which sounds like a great idea, just in a different game. In the Hitman games, or any stealth assassination game for that matter, if your target is being surrounded by guards, you can eliminate them either altogether or one by one and then get to your target. That's how you make your moment, so to speak. That's how you make your option. But in Yandere Simulator, because you can't just kill the students, because of course you can't, you have to lead them away after befriending them, which technically is like the same thing, but so much worse. When you have to grind to complete requirements to eliminate someone in a certain way, in a certain time frame, why is it even free roaming anymore? What's the fucking point? There's certain parts throughout Asana's schedule where she is just designed to not be killed. Like, you're just not supposed to be able to get to her. But what? Also, I'd just like to point out that somebody actually found a way to, like, almost immediately eliminate Osana by putting a bucket of gasoline on a door and having it fall onto a match, which is actually really, really smart. Which is why it is now no longer in the game. Now, this is a very clear example of the game not being balanced correctly, which I've literally just said before is a problem, but the only thing worse than a game being unbalanced is being inconsistent. Now, this player knows the game's mechanics, knows where items are, knows how to get them, knows Osana's route. Now, in Hitman, this is rewarded by giving you better elimination methods and making your score higher, making you a cleaner assassin, making you better at the game. You really feel like your knowledge is actually coming into play. However, Hitman is a good game. Yandere Simulator is not. In his March update video, Yandere Dev proclaims that he has quote-unquote fixed this issue, seeing it as a bad thing, because it's too easy to eliminate her, despite her supposedly being the easiest rival to eliminate, which, why would the easiest rival be easy to kill? That doesn't make any sense. In my opinion, if Yandere Dev is not going to put any time, care, or effort into balancing the game correctly, the players should at the very least be able to use these broken rules to exploit the game however they please. This elimination method is literally just using the tools that he has given them and killing Osana with them, which is the whole point of the game. but apparently it's too easy, so he's taking it out. The strangest thing is, it doesn't actually solve anything. The only thing it quote-unquote solves is this specific elimination method at this specific time. However, what's the broken part of this equation? Is it the bucket on the door? Is it her schedule? Is it something else entirely? We'll never know, because instead of fixing the core issue, which is the balancing, he's just put a band-aid fix on it by making Rybaru able to smell gasoline and go through like the door, which doesn't make any goddamn sense and just kicks you in the fucking nuts, because why learn about the game if it's going to stop you from doing it the way you want? Also, as an ending side note, Rybaru is like the worst goddamn character in this entire fucking game, both name-wise and design concept, because instead of just making her a bodyguard like in Hitman, where they are just a normal guard, but they trail someone, she's just fucking immortal. Yandere Dev has a whole elimination method specifically for her lined up in the future, because the stealth mechanics that are in the game that you've been learning for like 20 goddamn years don't actually work on her like they do every other character so far. What the fuck is the point?
To distract her with a giggle or a radio won't work. She ignores all audible distractions while she's hanging out with Osana. And you won't be able to send a student to distract her either.
Nah, that seems fair. Let's just pretend that this example is actually in Hitman. If I really, really wanted to, I could go downstairs or whatever, go outside and shoot them and then run away. I would get basically no points because everyone would have seen the murder and there's no body hidden. It's like such a terrible assassination attempt. But I would complete the level, because I don't go back to the level. I don't have to return. I don't have to face the consequences, which you definitely do in Yandere Simulator. Okay, I'm going to put it simply. If there is a time where the elimination target cannot be killed under any circumstance, it is impossible to kill them. Why are they on the map? People find it extremely annoying when games come out where, oh, it's open world, you can do anything except that. You can't do that. Don't do that. Alright? Don't ever do that. I'll kill you. That's annoying enough when it's in a good game. And this isn't a good game. I don't even dislike the idea of RPG elements in the game, but they're implemented super awkwardly. It would have been better if the week that you have was used to get bonuses and really grind your character up, where you can't attack the assassination target at all. That week's just for grinding and completing sideline quests for whatever club you're doing to get bonuses with them and raise your thing or whatever across the 7 or 10 weeks until you finally have a maxed out club status and you go to class to mold your character into the type of playstyle that you really want, and then at the end of the week you go into a level and then you can play the way you want or face off against people the way you want. And I'm now talking about Persona 5, and I didn't even realize it. Genuinely, I wrote this part and I didn't even fucking think about it. But yeah, I know it kind of betrays the whole idea of the game, but there are just clear foundational issues with having an RPG sandbox social sim assassination game set in a location that you continuously return to. Now, when I said I would have preferred it if the game gave you a whole week to grind up and, mold your character and then put you into a level at the end of the week, the problem that I was thinking of that it would solve was specifically one about kidnapping. In the current version of the game, you cannot kidnap someone without ranking up biology, because you need to use the tranquilizer, and without ranking up, you'll just kill them. But you can't get the tranquilizer because the nurse is currently just watching over it with a diligent eye, so you need to poison someone's bento box to get her to focus on them. But to get that poison, you need to rank up in chemistry, which is 2 days by itself. 4, if you don't have any stat boosts, which means your whole week is gone. And to tranquilize someone, you need to lead them away, so you actually need people to like you, and you need to do quests for them, which all in all is about 3 days. So that's 3 days of the week where you could be assassinating someone, but because you chose this method to do whatever, You just now have 3 days where your target walks by you in the hallway and you can't do anything because you're wasting your fucking time? Mind you, kidnapping is not a finished method of elimination. Yandere dev would say something like, oh, it's not finished, it doesn't represent the game, there's no point of it. And then I would argue, well then, that was just time wasted adding a completely pointless mechanic that serves no purpose in the game in its current state, hence delaying the main progression of the game. But yeah, fuck it. Yeah, kidnapping, it's so cool. The first level for each subject is already, to me, a balancing fucking nightmare. What the fuck are the other ones going to be? You have to make them better than the rank 1 unlock, otherwise there's no point of really going for them. And I really don't want to see more elimination methods locked behind ranks and shit, because that's just annoying. At first I was going to give a little slack to this idea, or the idea of game balancing, because you could just rank up your character across multiple fields over the course of multiple weeks, you know, if the rivals ever get implemented. And that sounds like a good idea, except you won't know what method you want to choose for future rivals, because you won't see their schedule until like they're in front of you, at which point the whole problem of only having a week to get your stats up is just repeated. So, you know, I was gonna be nice, but then I realized, oh, that's fucking stupid, because none of that makes any sense. This whole thing creates this suffocating feeling that like you're not playing the game's playing you. You know, you're not finding where they are and making an advantageous position. You're just like being given it to you if you have the required stats, which is fucking infuriating. You don't spend a week trailing your rival and detailing their lives and setting stuff up a day in advance for preparation. You're spending that time grinding for a mission. This wouldn't be a problem if you actually were grinding for a mission, because then it wouldn't feel like you were wasting your time training up your stats for kidnapping, at which point you would spend 3 days doing it and then essentially just have 2 days to actually complete your plan, which is just fucking stupid. The more I look into it, the more I see just how many problems there are creating a Hitman game and then slamming it together with a social sim and putting it in a high school. There's just countless issues with mechanics, game balancing, even fucking logically, which he's run into before. And I don't really think he recognizes that there's going to be problems implementing all these mechanics and getting them to work together. Or he just doesn't care. I just don't think he really knows. I'm certain that there is definitely a way to implement at least some of these mechanics and have them work in a good flow, a perfect flow, and have that all work correctly. But that's not happening in Yandere Simulator at like any stage. I could kind of let this slide if he wasn't planning on punishing you for killing all of your targets and making like the school atmosphere drop to the point where you would already fail the love confession because everyone would be so fucking depressed. And like, why treat these things like optional character growth when they're just not? It just makes the entire game this like boring and pointless assassination sandbox RPG with no reason to have RPG elements in it at the moment, and no assassination target, and no free choice to like justify having it as a sandbox, like a social sim with nothing approaching the term social or sim, with way too many mechanics that are all too vapid and pointless and are probably just going to cause more trouble than they're worth later on in the game's development. And also, he just keeps adding new mechanics because he thinks they're cool, which just ruins the whole fucking point of the game, if you could even call it a game anymore. TLDR, just make the game representative of the final version that you want. Just have a flat plane with you and Osana, and then add things on top of that. Because you can't really know where future development will lead if you don't even have any fucking idea what the current development is. If you think I'm pulling some fucking vague Chinese proverb about game design out of my ass, trust me, I'm not. This is pretty common sense. And also, he even says like he has problems with the game's balancing while he's making it. In the most recent video, at least at the time of this recording, he's talking about adding Osana and how many exploits and bugs he has to fix, and of course there is. You can't make an FPS game and then at the very last minute throw a bunch of Unity asset guns into the mix and just say, God, I hope this fucking works. He spends the video detailing how he fixed bugs and exploits around the expulsion elimination method, which has existed for 4 years, also known as the majority of the game's development, also known as one of the core mechanics that he should have already known everything about, which means he is fucked. He's straight up fucked. Everything here is just going to be a potential balancing issue. Also, one of the problems that he had with Osana and balancing her was a scheduling conflict.
Kokona's routine made her stay at school until 6 p.m., so the cutscene where the guidance counselor lectures Kokona would occur when the school day ended at 6 p.m. This would not work for Osana, because Osana's routine makes her leave school around 5:30 p.m. with Senpai.
And I don't need to say this, but I will. If Osana was in the game before you created the elimination method that specifically applies to her and no one else, maybe you wouldn't have coded in a scheduling conflict because you would have already known what Osana's schedule would have been. It is such an unbelievably simple concept. I can't believe this has flown over his head for years. Why would he do that though? That makes too much sense, dude. Fuck me. Those are just two big issues with the game that it definitely has and like just can't be fixed because it's like design philosophy and stuff. I have so many more, but this is where I can't really technically critique anything because technically nothing's finished part comes in. All of these parts that I'm going ahead with could technically be changed in the future. And by technically, I mean probably not, but who knows, maybe somebody will steal the code for Yandere Simulator and just finish it in like a year. Maybe this will all be wrong, maybe this will all be outdated. Take it with a grain of salt if you actually believe Alex is going to finish the game, and take this as gospel if you don't. Alright, let's go! Even at its furthest zoom, the camera is so close. I'm gonna have a claustrophobic panic attack, and I do not have claustrophobia. And on that point, what purpose does this camera position serve? You're so awkwardly in center frame, I just don't get why it's this close in such a strange position, while also still having the entire character in shot. Is it just so that we can see her underwear? Maybe. Who knows? It's probably that. Is he just proud of this model? Well, he probably shouldn't, because almost everything in this game so far has had some kind of tie to the Unity store at some point, such as the gym, which is still in the game, the main character's bedroom, which is still in the game, the main character, which is still in the game, and every other character in the entire game. Wowee. Oh my god. He said before that the character models will be changed, but how the fuck can you even trick yourself into believing that? Like, seriously? If they were going to be changed, they should have already been changed. Like, he's going out trying to add shit like a fucking music store in a street that shouldn't even fucking exist in the game right now. Like, it genuinely is. This street edition is a slap in the fucking face. A music store? Are you serious? You have animation rigs for every single character that you keep making new animations for, but yeah, I'm totally gonna change the character models and just delete all of that animation work because doing work and redoing content is what I'm known for. Yeah, bitch. No, but seriously, at this point in the game, if the character models get changed significantly to something that doesn't represent a Unity store asset and are actually unique and are actually fucking good, then I imagine the animation work will set people back by about a year, and also because modeling is not really, you know, his strong suit. I mean, nothing is his strong suit, and the fact that he has to rely on volunteers to do his 3D modeling work, I imagine any 3D modeling done for a character that has to be unique will take a long time and allow him to procrastinate even more. So, world's fucked, we're all gonna die. Despite the character models looking, trash can adjacent, They actually aren't the strangest models in the entire game. Two of the environments, the house from a cutscene a while back and the gym, as far as people know, are just basically just like a bunch of objects slammed together, which is good for single scene stuff, like if you're doing a 3D render for like a Blender thing, because you don't have to move the chairs. But for a game, that's bad. That's really bad. The more detailed an object, the longer it takes to render, and the longer it takes to load it and its textures into the game or into the scene. Now, if you're only doing like a single shot in Blender and you're just rendering a single image from like a single point of view, and you're just putting some fucking crazy lighting effects in there, you're putting some fucking anthroposcopic filtering and all that kind of shit, ambient occlusion, mad shadows, max quality and all that, takes it fucking 3 days to render, that's fine, you know, because you don't, it's not a game. You don't need to wait 3 days for a single frame of a game. It's not interactive. You have the image forever. It seems like the majority of the time that the Unity Store asset is actually a placeholder and gets changed out for a specifically made asset just for Yandere Simulator. It's because people told the original creator and they complained and they got mad. And despite that, the game looks shit. It looks bad. Like, it looks bad. Not so much graphically, which I'll get into later, but more stylistically, because there's no theme, there's no aesthetic, no nothing. It's just a bunch of objects thrown together, which is very, very obvious when you know that all the students like use the same base model, and that base model doesn't really like fit with the trees that they spawn right next to, because the trees look like they're out of like Morrowind or something, and the characters don't. The worst part about this is if you go to the stairs that leave the school and you look out, you can see trees. I can see trees right now that stylistically and aesthetically fit the characters. What the fuck is going on? Just give me those trees. Everything here is stolen anyway. Who gives a shit? The game just has to be able to run shadows in its current state with the current version. Like it just, there's one light source. Any more, I guess, would crash the game, or maybe your life. But it has to run shadows. And I'm not talking like graphically, like, oh, it has to look like The Witcher. No, it has to run shadows on Unity Engine, otherwise it's not going to run. Despite being the butt of certain jokes a while ago, Unity Engine is a really good engine right now. It is not prehistoric by any means. Real-time lighting should not halve my frame rate. Why does it do that? What? I am looking at it. I am looking at real-time lighting not halve people's frame rates. Why does it halve mine? What have you done to this game? Oh, by the way, I should also say that I recorded a lot of this footage on my capture card, even though I have a more than powerful enough CPU with more than enough RAM, with an M.2 SSD running the game, and also a graphics card that is more categorically akin to a murder weapon than it is to an actual computer part. So, I don't think it's an overhead created by me or the software. I'm pretty sure the game just sucks ass.
No, dude, what do you mean? I just need a, I just need to get a job. I need to get a real job. I just stop being a little baby, get a real job, and buy a gaming computer. Yeah, bitch.
I haven't been able to get 60 FPS for more than a second. Like, this is depressing. At the end of his most recent video, he even teases new post-processing. And can I ask, is this a bit? Is it a joke? Is this some cruel, sick joke? These, like, post-processing effects, look shit. I don't want to, but they look like shit. Everything is hazy, over or underexposed. Like, it doesn't fucking do anything. This feels like a Unity project more than it does a game made by using Unity Engine. This feels like a $2 cheap scam artist game where they just fucking blew that shit out of proportion. Oh my god, it looks so fucking bad. Why would you ever think that this was the answer? Like, this is like a workaround solution to a problem he definitely caused. As a small addition to what I just said, I wrote this part after the parts that come after this one as a way to discuss the blog posts that I had just read when I wrote this, specifically the February and March ones where he's talking about harassment and lies and hatred and like us being shitty people for talking like lies about him, and how those lies make him depressed and can't find the will to go on and what have you. And in a way I understand it, but more so no, I don't. While his feelings can't be invalidated, which I am not trying to do, the cause of them is very much within his control. Alex genuinely believes that all the criticism levied against him is like some mean-spirited or ill-willed bullshit, like lies that he's already disproved. And I mean, if that was the case, if like you could easily disprove all of my lies about how you're a bad programmer, why does the game run like shit? I mean, if it's so easy to disprove, why is it not being disproved? Why does nobody believe you? To point to these lies and fake critiques, so to speak, as the reason for your depression is like it's the most guilt trippy thing I've ever fucking seen. If it was genuinely something that you couldn't control, that you had no power over, that makes total sense. That would fucking crush a lot of people's mental health. But this is a totally solvable solution. Like, the power to stop this is completely within Alex's hands. It's just like, admit that you're wrong and try and fix the game. Hand off development. Admit that you're wrong even if you don't believe it. Just, like, it's not about you anymore. It's about the fans. That's what the whole fucking thing is. As if me saying he's a bad programmer and a lazy person constitutes harassment to the point where it would cause a depressive state because of just how badly I'm lying to the public and trying to, twist his words or what have you. When in the very next blog post, less than like half a month or something, like less than a month later, he specifically says he's having a skilled programmer or what have you working on getting the game from Unity Engine 2017.3 to 29.3, which would fix bugs, increase it'll decrease loading times and make the game run faster, which is essentially just saying I'm not a bad programmer or a lazy person, and saying so is really damaging my mental health because they are lies that I cannot refute to your satisfaction. You're going to keep saying them and you're going to keep spouting lies to my fans. Anyway, I am now going to get somebody else to work on my game to fix problems caused by my code.
What?
This feels a lot like when pharmaceutical companies get sued for putting out a drug that, kills people or something. They settle out of court, deny responsibility, and say, the drug was perfectly safe, there was no problem with it, hence why we are now taking it off the market. It's a complete contradiction, which, mind you, is not uncommon, especially with Yandere dev. But very rarely do I see them right next to each other. And also, don't fucking kill yourself. What the hell? Just hand off development to somebody skilled and then just take a sabbatical. Who gives a shit? But yeah, after those minor issues, great game. I can't wait for it to be released. Wasn't that fun talking about video games? Oh, damn. That was the first part done. But now we're talking about Alex because there's been some developments while I've been gone. Oh boy. This is what you came for. The biggest thing that has occurred in relation to me specifically since my absence would be the hate and shame video. The world famous hate and shame video where he basically just strawmans every argument, and the arguments he does represent correctly, he doesn't understand, and demeans basically everyone. Now, I did not want the game to fail, and I still don't. Not because I want Alex to keep, draining people's wallets dry, but because I just found it very strange that children were giving him money with very little returns because of his callous and lazy management of an objectively popular project. So the following statement is not meant to be condescending in any way. This is just stating a fact. With the hate and shame video, Alex made quite possibly the worst decision he could have. He basically just brought drama that his fans probably didn't even know about in front of them, and then did a very poor job at dismissing the obviously misleading criticism to the point where any one of his fans may have gotten curious and then researched it and then realized he was just lying to them and gotten really fucking annoyed. And also, he did this by making a video that took time away from developing Osana, which was one of the largest criticisms that we had of him. The best decision here would have been a multi-step process, and it starts with shut the hell up. Basically, just stop, doing social media, stop using Discord, don't check the Reddit, don't respond to anything that isn't a non-essential email, stuff that volunteers are sending in, just check that and basically nothing else. Slow down the YouTube schedule, don't post monthly updates, don't post special Christmas, whatever the fuck. Just post updates when they're ready, when big updates are ready. Number 2, for those videos, drop the production value entirely, or just get an editor. Like, don't even, put any effort into them. If you don't get an editor, just get your screen capture and just talk through some notes, be really transparent with people, don't use animations, don't use any of that shit. Just, here's what I've got working, here's what I need to do, this is what I'm having trouble with, I could get help from this person, something like that. People really like that shit because it doesn't look like you're directly lying to them or making excuses. Also, stop proposing ideas in videos. This one still applies to now. Stop proposing ideas in videos because every time he does that, the fans go, yeah, that sounds cool. And then he gets distracted and then does that and it takes 2 weeks and then Osana is dead in the water. So, yeah, stop doing that. Number 3, work fervently and exclusively on Osana. Do nothing else. Do not fix bugs. Don't even try and get new assets into the game, replacing assets. Just ignore all of that. Just get Osana working. That's what the people wanted. Get her in the game, even if it's in a broken, buggy state. Get her in the game, and then fix the bugs going on, and then add, all that kind of stuff. To show that you're listening to people, essentially. That if people want Osana, hey, maybe I should put Osana into the game. All that kind of stuff. Alex wanted Osana to not be a disappointment, but at this point, by delaying her continuously, he has built up hype that no game could ever fulfill. It's just impossible. Just throw her out unceremoniously. It doesn't matter anymore. She's going to be a disappointment no matter what happens. Just fucking kick her to the curb, get her in the game, then start making an actual good game instead of trying to be theatric with all this shit, because nobody cares about the theatrics. People want to play a good game. Surprising, I know, but that's why we do interactive experiences. To have fun. Instead, he attacked everyone, ignored all constructive criticism and suggestions. He represented me and other creators that criticized him in such ways as a stupid, shitty YouTuber with bad hair and stupid sunglasses, and then called me a gremlin. Nice work, man. I'm sure the multiple critiques I made about you and the game across 50 minutes of my time won't come up again. I'm sure nobody else will ever notice them and have problems with them. They won't cause issues down the line because I am the smartest person alive. I'm the only person that could possibly see these as issues. Nobody else will. Your fans are all so stupid, they won't notice. Ha! Fuck, dude. Oh, shit, that was so cool. I got fucking owned, dude. My god. As much as I would like to believe that I have any kind of power in this soul-crushing world in which I am but a measly tick, I don't. I'm nothing. My videos views don't really, relate that well to his Patreon dropping. They spike at different times. But his hate and shame videos release correlates extremely well with his Patreon dropping. Oops. Oh look, Yandere Dev released another video. Hey, I've been watching him for a long time. Maybe I should support him on Patreon. Little uptick. But oh, what's this? Drama? What is he talking about, drama? I haven't heard about this. At that time, he was making around $3,500 per month with Patreon, and quite soon after, he was making $2,500. Because, of course, did he think people wouldn't get tired of him? like they wouldn't get annoyed. Fans have been begging him to do certain things or remove certain things from the game for ages, and he just doesn't listen to them. Like, which leads me to my next point.
Watashi wa Nihonjin desu.
It's very weird that he's making a game that heavily leans into Japanese culture, customs, and way of life when he doesn't really understand any of it because he isn't Japanese and doesn't speak it. There was a very interesting post on the Yandere Simulator subreddit before he bought it. Oh, side note, he bought the subreddit. He got to it, which is great. And there's some images of him arguing his price, which he goes from, I want it for free, I'll settle for 1,000, and then, get this, arguing that 1,000 to like 2.8k, and then arguing against himself to bring that 2.8k up to 3k. Which is it? That's a stonks moment if I've ever seen one. Holy shit, that's out of the deal, baby. Back on topic, this post was made by somebody who was like native language Japanese and also knew English, and was basically talking about how like cringe some of the names are, or like how some of them just don't sound Japanese, or nuances that we wouldn't really understand from just learning the language, like how we as English speakers know that Johnson is a last name. Like you wouldn't have Johnson Reed. That sounds kind of weird, you know? Or how certain names have gone out of fashion, like how Beatrice is an old name and hasn't been used in a while and has been replaced with Triss. The criticism was pretty scathing, not in its delivery, but in its content instead. And unfortunately, I can only view this in broken CSS because, of course, the post has been removed. In the post, she actually gave some pretty good replacement names. Like, I actually genuinely tried to help, not just doing what I do, where I'm just like, yeah, bitch, yeah, that sucks, yeah. Like, they were actually trying to give replacements, and of course, those replacements aren't in the game, and the student council members still have their first name as their fucking hair color. Also, the student council leader, who's perfect at everything, because that's how animes portray them. Her name is like, something goddess, or like perfect goddess or some shit, and it sounds cringy as shit even for me. Luckily, he's now moved on and is now giving them actual Japanese names that just like kind of have some meaning related to what they're doing, instead of just naming them like paintbrush, the noun. Unfortunately, he hasn't done this retroactively, so there's still a bunch of students, or the majority of the students, that have really shitty names. You know, I almost complimented him there for a second, and you know, it was a fun ride. I liked it. It was fun while it lasted. Okay, so the entire game feels like it's being made by an American whose entire understanding of Japan is through the lens of anime. Because it is, and it makes everything extremely uncomfortable. I would hate to be Japanese. That would fucking suck. And before anyone says anything, yeah, I know the game is kind of meant to be that way, and it's kind of meant to make you feel uncomfortable. I'm already stretching my imagination and giving a lot of leeway. But when everything is wrong, it's kind of hard to ignore. And also, murder doesn't deter me in this life or the next. I don't fucking care. It's just really strange how there isn't even like a hint of Western anything in there. Like, if you're from America, you have boundless resources and like infinite text. You can read any book that you want that's printed in English to learn about your country, learn about your culture. You can do any of that, which a Japanese person cannot do. You have infinite resources to learn about where you're from, and instead, you don't do that, and to make the entire game just Japanese-centric. Like, not even a Japanese-American mix, which would have been interesting, which certain animes actually do. Certain anime games do as well. None of that. It's just all Japanese, which is weird because it's entirely based around a single less than accurate portrayal of a country you don't live in, with references in a language you don't understand, that implements taboo concepts that you couldn't possibly understand the nuances to without actually having experienced it or being in that country. I did a frankly ungodly amount of research just to make a single shirt, which is that one, where it's just 2 lines, it's just my name on it, it's just Kappa Kaiju, and even then, I am aware that I got something wrong. There are a few examples of this from the past, like the school layout not exactly being correct, and even now it's still a bit off. The school uniform being for the wrong level of schooling, because that's what it's like in anime, and that's the only conceivable reason why he hasn't changed it, even though people keep pointing it out. But the most egregious manifestation of this is the panty shots, and I'm gonna fucking evaporate just saying that. God! You see, because of Alex's incessant intent on adding trivial details to the game, we know the age of basically any adult character. I don't think there's a single one that we don't know the age of. But that information becomes quite sparse when you look at the students. In fact, on the official wiki, or whatever, I think it's the official wiki, then their ages aren't listed, because there's a disclaimer at the start of the game that says all characters are 18 years or over, even if there's contradicting evidence. As if that makes any of the actions in the game, like it just makes them marginally more tolerable. Oh no, my classmates have been assaulted and killed. Oh no, there's been some risque sexual stuff going on here, but it's all good because we're all 18, which means we're all legal adults in a legal system from a different country. My conscience is clear, because look at me in my middle school uniform. I'm 18. I'm 18. Say it back. Look me in the eyes and say I'm 18, alright? Say I'm 18. Say it now. Even in this tacky garb that I only bought for a skit, I'm looking damn good. This is like cosplay wear, and I could only get it from Japan, and it's very, very apparent that it wasn't made for people over 5'6". This is like the largest size, and I feel like a fucking child. You know, yeah, I can murder kids and like invade their privacy and fucking sexually assault them, but they're all 18, so my conscience is pure. There's nothing wrong with this. Also, in his most recent video, he just announced that he's selling body pillows of some of the students, and it's very weird and very messed up, and also they're appearing in quite literally like a triple X rate, an adult game. I'm desperately trying to dance around YouTube's algorithms here. Just give me a break. The characters from Yandere Simulator that are in this game aren't depicted in a lewd way like they are in the games. It is quite literally like the whole thing. Definitely not safe for any kind of consumption. Burn my eyes out. Throw me in a ditch. He justifies this because, as he said before, they're 18 plus, and no, I'm fine. Thanks for asking. How are you? And it doesn't matter anyway, because the audience for Yandere Simulator are totally not children, because he said that he doesn't want children to follow this game, and he shows his YouTube demographic to prove that everyone's over the age of 18, calling it empirical evidence. Now, I don't have a problem with using YouTube analytics to prove your point, but you can't just call it quote-unquote empirical evidence and pretend like that makes it foolproof. That's not actually what empirical literally means. YouTube demographics are the most unreliable source of information you could possibly find, because people will just lie and say they're over 18 to watch 18 plus content. That's literally what it is. By the way, the second to last rival that you face is your love interest's younger sister, who doesn't want him romantically. Nice save. But instead just wants all of his attention and doesn't want him to get a girlfriend, and is listed as being 2 years behind, but only a year younger, which doesn't make any mathematical sense, but even then, at best, she's 17. Ooh, baby, yeah. Yeah, killing and taking panty shots of a 17-year-old. I'm gonna fucking throw up. In the Play in 1980s mode, you're supposed to play as Yandere-chan's mother, specifically like the same time frame that her daughter is in right now. You know, with a little bit more challenge, a little bit more lore. You know, you can't use your phone because there are no smartphones, so you can't take panty shots of students. Therefore, she's 17. Also, why the fuck do we even have this information? So when Yandere-chan's mother is doing the same thing as Yandere-chan, she was 17. But when Yandere-chan's doing it, no, she's 18. That's fine. That's she's 18. What the? It's like kind of the same reason why all that lolly shit just fucks me off so much. You can put as much fine print as you want on it, but If it barks, it's a dog, and if it's in high school, it's a teenager. Like, what the fuck? You can disclaim the shit out of it. It's the intentions are pretty fucking clear. Also, this disclaimer would only serve to dispute third-party sources. It's extremely pointless if the person who wrote it also contradicts themselves. Despite it being scummy, it still makes more sense to have it and then imply they're 17. It really doesn't work when you say, don't trust what other people say, only my word is canon, and then saying they're 17. You absolute moron. I won't ever understand Japan, so while I dislike it, I can't really say I understand it. But Alex isn't from Japan. He's from America. He should know better. He should know that the age of consent shouldn't be 13. He should know that because he's grown up in a country where that isn't the case. But he just ignores that. You can't get away with that, in my opinion. You can't just make a game that's set in Japan and then just ignore the fact that you've grown up in America like all your life. That doesn't make any sense. Hey, another side note here. I know they're very common, but I keep finding stuff and I just really feel like I need to mention it. There was actually a concept that he either was working on or still is. It hasn't been implemented yet, obviously, back in 2017, of having you open your skirt as an inventory system, a la, you know, like Resident Evil 4, except way more lewd. He polled it and there were 3 choices. Only proceed if you're going to censor them, don't use it at all, or proceed and just do whatever you want, basically the lewdest option. Now, he clearly wanted option 3. He didn't want option 1, and he certainly didn't like option 2. Except the vast majority of the people that were polled just disagreed with him. Like, just gave him answers he didn't want to hear. So as a response, in the next post, he recognized this, he mentioned it, and then spent the next 17 paragraphs basically trying to reason as to why he should keep showing a schoolgirl's panties in a video game. As if it's, like, important. Because it is important, just only to him. Not even Americans defend freedom of speech this valiantly. Like, this is actually impressive. It's just not exactly the hill I think he should die on. He argues that the reason Yandere Simulator is popular is because it's not bland, it's not being safe, and it's risque, which isn't really accurate, seeing as you can't really quantify what makes something popular without polling an entire audience, which he hasn't really done, so he's just making that up. And if anything, I would say it's more the concept of a stealth game at a school, which is interesting, rather than the fact you can sexually assault teenagers. I don't think that ranks very highly on people's to-do list. And while this poll is distinctive because of the subject matter, quite a lot of them stick out, not because of the same reasons, but because of the tone and the implications of what he's polling. People have found issue with this in the past, specifically stating that, like, there's actually no statistical value in what he's polling because they're such loaded questions. It is pretty much just like, hey, did you watch this video? Hey, are you a human? Hey, do you have empathy for other human beings? Crazy. All right, then you're a chill fan. Yeah, dude. What? That poll was one of 2 from February the 17th, 2017. The second one is actually worse. The question is not great, and the answers are even worse. Firstly, the question isn't exactly pollable. It's far more complex than that. And secondly, the answers are all extremely loaded and pretty much completely worthless. Some of them don't even contradict each other, so what's the fucking point? And he has the fucking audacity in one of the answers to say your health and happiness are most important, which I don't even think makes grammatical sense. I could be wrong, but I feel like I just read something while having a stroke. And secondly, it implies that if you don't answer that, then you're saying his health and happiness are not important, as if those 2 things are completely dependent on you fixing them for him. What the fuck is wrong with him? Back to the video. Having panty shots of adults who are actually teenagers in your game, to the vocal dismay of many, is... it's fucking pathetic, to be honest. You could just change it to something else. There are other ways to get around this problem, but he seems pretty intent on making himself seem like a massive goddamn creep, which is what some people may call a transition. In my honest, genuine opinion, Yandere Dev is one of the viler human beings that has been given a platform to reach many an impressionable young fan. Now, I didn't mention stuff like this in the last video because was stuff like him being called a pedophile, because I assumed he would give more evidence and would further refute the claims, and then he didn't. So here I am. He doesn't exactly have the hatred and disdain that most sane people have for pedophiles, and he kind of has similar opinions to what a pedophile would have. But yeah, dude, no, it's fine. It's not their fault. He's gone on the record stating that in a discussion about the age of consent that he was just having with someone, because people do that, I guess, that he would revoke, or the idea to revoke the age of consent and instead have a sex license, which out of context is the funniest fucking thing I've ever heard. Now, Yandere Dev says that this conversation started because the person he was talking with seemed to believe that Yandere Simulator contains depictions of underage characters in quote-unquote sexual situations. However, there are no quote-unquote sexual situations in Yandere Simulator. Now, this seems like easy pickings, but I really feel like I should enforce the fact that he has no fucking clue what he's talking about. First off, he didn't actually dispute that they're underage, which just go back 10 minutes in the video and watch that again, you get my point. And secondly, he continuously uses the word lewd, which by definition actually includes sexual behavior. Not every definition includes the word sexual, but quite a lot of them do, meaning a lewd situation could be reinterpreted as a sexual situation. You know what the word lewd means. Like, you watching this right now knows what this word means. You know it implies sexual situations. There's no way he doesn't. This is just a complete lie. Basically, the age of consent isn't a thing, and you take a test to find out your sexual maturity, which age of consent destroyed with facts and logic, except none of that, because it's a dumb idea. There are quite a few studies and surveys that show when people become sexually active at certain demographics around the world and countries and all of that, but there are a few of them that actually ask, did you regret it? Like, later on, did you regret all of that kind of stuff? And for a very low percentage of people at the 16 to 17 bracket, a very disproportionately high percentage of them did regret it. More so women. Wow, what a surprise. Ooh, nobody would have seen that one coming. Oh. Hi there. You probably know that the statistics are already going to agree with me, so you can skip this part if you want, but I just thought it should be, important to list my sources and all of that and show what I'm talking about. So I'll do this real quick. You can skip to this point if you just want to ignore this. I'm specifically getting my information from a study in Scotland and also a compilation, I think, or like a write-up, the Irish Study of Sexual Health and Relationship, which sources multiple different things later on, so I don't know if it's actually a study itself. In the section specifically about regret, despite not mentioning anyone below the age of 18, they do conclude that younger age groups are significantly more likely to say they should have waited longer. Women are more likely to do it across all age groups, 19% on average to 14%. Now, this is just Ireland. However, there is another study. The extent of regretted sexual intercourse among young teenagers in Scotland across sectional survey specifically looks at teenagers around the mean age of 14 years old. Now, this thing looks ugly as shit, but it does prove a few points. Also, the numbers in the brackets are the percentages. Firstly, even at this age group, women are more likely to regret their first sexual experience and say it was too soon. While the percentage of men who say it was too soon compared to the percentage of women are comparable, the percentage of women who say it shouldn't have happened at all are significantly higher, sometimes more than double, which is really weird. Next, if the boy pressured the girl into the experience, the percentage of those who say it was too soon completely skyrockets on both genders. Also, because there's no direct comparison to any other age group, I should say, these numbers are unbelievably fucking high. Lastly, and most importantly, mind you, pretty much nothing changed the percentage of those who regretted it. It's just like the age, and that's it. That's pretty much the only thing that changes the percentage. Now, if Yandere Dev sees this and still has any brain cells left after sniffing glue off his body pillows, he may argue that I just said that the younger they are, the higher the percentages are, and 14 is a bit unrealistic. Except in this post that we're talking about, he specifically talks about the age 14. Like, that's specifically an example where the person he was discussing with asked, would this sex license thing, still a funny name, work if it was a 14-year-old that wanted to have sex with a grown man or a grown man that wanted to have sex with a 14-year-old? And he says, well, obviously, I stick with my point, which is really weird because the numbers really don't agree with him. Also, you should check out this post. I don't know exactly how legitimate it is, but it does not read like an attention-grabbing kind of post. It does seem very genuine, in which the age 14 is mentioned again. And it is quite strange to read, so do go ahead at your own caution. If it was just this post and nothing else, I wouldn't really be showing it to you, but in compilation with what we know of him now, this doesn't really look like an out-of-character fabricated on lies. It does really seem like a continuation of the evolution of the person that he is now. It does kind of seem like repeat behavior. But surveys are for nerds. So let's just imagine a situation with two people. They're both the same age. They're both teenagers. In this situation, both people have about as much power as each other. Neither of them really know much more than the other person. Everything's very safe. It's in a controlled environment, so to speak. Now, let's take that, remove one of them, and then add a 30-year-old who can totally take advantage of the other person because there is now an insane power dynamic in his favor. Holy shit, what a great idea. Literally, the defining feature of a teenager is, God, Mom, I'm not a kid anymore, because they think that they know more than they do. Teenagers thinking that they know more than they do and then finding out through experience that they don't is like the whole purpose of being a teenager. They're fucking stupid and they're worthless and they leech off people. That's why you're a teenager, to learn that you're a fucking idiot. Thinking that you're ready, even technically knowing what you're doing, isn't always an indicator that you actually are ready. You just have to experience stuff. That's not even about what we're talking about. That's just life in general. Also, you could cheat on an exam, you degenerate bitch. Holy shit. Fucking exam. An exam instead of the age of consent. Oh, I'm gonna throw up. I could have just called him a dummy dongo brain and been done with all this because nobody in respectable society would have disagreed with me. But I chose to genuinely engage with the point and really get some statistics going and argue against it so I could have the cathartic experience of smacking him down with the might of Zeus, just to prove that he's not just wrong, he's really, really fucking wrong. Someone that used to work with him, once described Yandere Simulator as a perverted spin on hatred, and I somewhat take that philosophy to Yandere Dev himself. He's a perverted spin on a weeb. And, you know, while weebs can sometimes be perverts by themselves, this is like compounding pervert. This is like pervert to the power of itself. That was a maths joke.
Those are some big busty boobies.
The only reason we know his current or past position on the age of consent is because he just posted it. He gave us this as a response. This is a response to somebody calling him a pedophile. And he wrote this down on his computer and he looked at it and there was a part of his brain that just thought, yeah, this is good. This will show people that I'm not a pedophile. What? Just lie. Just say, nope, the age of consent is fine. It should be at least 18 everywhere across the globe. I don't like pedophiles. I think they suck. I hope they all go to jail. You could have just said that. You could have lied to us and it would have been fine. But instead, he decided to post this and think, yeah, people will be on my side now.
I, Other X, humbly submit a toast.
I'm really glad that I live in a world where my realm of existence, like my circle, has collided with the phrase consume the cum challenge. Like, that's a thing now. That's objectively... That happened, and we can't pretend it didn't. We can't go back. We shouldn't, but we can't. The Yandere Dev Discord speedrun is, well, it's a thing of beauty, honestly. I think it's, one of the triumphs of mankind as a whole, because where I spent almost an hour detailing or trying to conceptualize Alex's toxicity towards his fans that was apparent but vague, and also trying to show that, you know, the coding was incorrect, both how it was written and the theoretical structure of coding languages. People just posted a fucking picture on his Discord, and it proved basically everything I was trying to prove anyway. And the beauty of it is, it's faster, it's more efficient, and proves more with fewer words. It's basically the essence of speedrunning. As far as I'm aware, the world record is held by someone called Volsk, who has a sub 1 second time if you round down from below 0.5. And god damn, look at that routing. There's no exploits, there's no engine manipulation, that's just fucking routing. That's just technical skill. Pure fucking speedrunning. Despite repeating myself, I think it's important to reinforce that this entire situation or experience is completely indicative of who Alex was 1.5 years ago and who he is now. While it's not him banning those people from the Discord, he's created this echo chamber through his toxicity and just such a anti-anyone else mindset. It seems like at every impasse as perceived by him, he makes the wrong choice. This has gone on for so long that enough knowledge has spread to his general following to the point where, like, this isn't, like, ignorance anymore. You can't really feign that. This is... You would have a better time responding to criticism by throwing darts at a dartboard. You would get a higher success rate, I am certain. There are a few parts of this video that are aimed directly at Alex, because spliced in between all my metaphors, analogies, jokes, and flowery language is what I believe to be genuine, like, constructive criticism. Like, genuinely trying to help. And genuine messages. So this is one of those times. The getting banned on Discord speedrun was and is not some blundering agent of chaos or the mist born from the souls of the damned that just destroys anything the wind blows them towards. It's frustration. I fail to see it as anything other than that. Like, people are just getting so fucking furious with how little is being done, how little their voices mean to the developer. It's just frustration. I didn't even give him money and I'm frustrated. You probably didn't. Most of the people watching the first video didn't either. I couldn't even possibly approach the mental state of what people would be thinking. And even if you did give him money, you couldn't possibly understand the wider community's feelings about it. The only person who could really conceptualize all of this is Alex himself, but he doesn't want to, or he just doesn't know, like, what's going on. I don't even think I have to use my platform to condemn these people for harassing Alex with malice intent, because in reality it's petty intent at best, and it's not really interacting with Alex at all. Honestly, if he's not getting distracted by his work, then he shouldn't even know any of these people joined. They're having fun wasting his moderator's time because he wasted theirs. Delaying crucial content, dismissing anyone that was trying to help, and being toxic to anyone who'd even approached a dissenting thought. All the while streaming 2 to 3 hours a day, even though he's monumentally behind on his work. Hey, do you like this unintentional recurring feature in my videos where I take so long to make them that you see me physically age throughout them? Isn't that great? I made this whole breakdown of the game showing like how much it's actually been completed thus far. Using, work in his previous videos and counting how long it took him to implement certain features and the weighting of those certain features, and I did this whole fucking thing before I realized the thing that I realized at the start of this video, that there is an unknown amount of balancing and bug fixes that he has to do, so all of that is entirely pointless and we can't even possibly judge when the game's going to be finished. I also spoke somewhat briefly about object-oriented programming and the pillars of it, and to just recap that really quickly. Imagine a student's writing an essay and he needs 5 references. There's 2 options here. To ignore the essay part, it's not actually important. Focus on the books. Now, there's 2 options. The first one is to get those books, like buy them, and then he owns those 5 books. Or he can borrow those 5 books from a library that's special, that as soon as it gets a book, it has an infinite supply of those books. Now, if that student was the only person to ever write an essay in their entire lives, in the history of the Earth, then yeah, that's fine, even like up to 2 or 3 students. Like, inefficiency is fine in small numbers, but if there's 11 people writing 11 essays, you now have 11 copies of the same book when you only actually needed 1. So the library is more complicated and it takes a long time to build, but it's more efficient in the long run. This is a vague and insultingly simplistic way of describing inheritance. It's a lot more complicated than that, and there's a lot more to go into. It's actually kind of interesting, but not in this video. Now, the students in Yandere Simulator are coded so poorly that example doesn't even do it justice. It's more like if you wanted to have 2,357 books in one library, or you wanted to have 2,357 books in 2,357 libraries. Now, the better way to do it is to have a student repository and just have each individual student grab traits that they use. Instead, he just has a single student file that just is 17,000 lines long that has every single thing an NPC could possibly have, and they just turn off the things that they aren't going to use. Now, to people, that sounds efficient, but to a computer, it's actually the complete opposite and may actually be the worst possible way to code a student, because it doesn't ignore the lines of code that it doesn't need in that 17,000 line clump. It doesn't do that. It reads like most of the lines of code and then picks out what it needs. So it's essentially like running 17,000 lines of code on every student on every frame, which is probably why the shadows are so fucked. Now, I know I was talking about the future of the game, so I'm not bringing this up for no reason. This is actually very important for implementing rivals, which, again, he said are just iterations of each other that are harder difficulties and all that kind of stuff. Now, if he was a software engineer, or he understood the basics of the language he's programming in, that would be good. Unfortunately, you already know where this is going. If he was smart enough and had experience in this area, he could create a solution that was fast and efficient for him to do, but still gave him headroom for expansions later on. Wow, look at this. I'm actually fixing his code with basically no experience. Holy shit, this is so hard. It's crazy. Hey, do you want to know where I found this super intense code that shortens everything significantly? You'll never guess. It's called W3 Schools, also known as quite literally the starting place for pretty much everyone's first coding experience. It's like the first thing you learn. This is really easy, by the way. Also, shout out to my sister for reminding me how to use iterative loops. I completely forgot. I completely forgot how to code. As far as I'm aware, unless something completely off course has happened, the game is running in C#, which isn't the coolest language and it's not the fastest language, but it's a lot better than JavaScript, and thank fucking God it's not something like Pascal. Like, can you even code games in Pascal? Can you even code in Pascal? I fucking hate that language. Pascal can go fucking die. Unfortunately, seeing as the game still very much runs like a young paraplegic boy who's also blind and chained to an anchor at the bottom of the ocean, I very much doubt that Yandere Dev has suddenly started to understand the things that make C# better than JavaScript, like the fact C# has inheritance and JavaScript basically doesn't. Also, slight bias, I fucking hate JavaScript. I fucking hate it so much. This is what I can gather from the either leaked or ripped or stolen student.cs script thing, which I don't know if it's real, but it is too depressingly verbose for me to think otherwise. Like, this is... No one would write 17,000 lines of code as a joke. And it was at that point that I realized what I thought was happening with the students was, except it was actually worse, and I kind of wanted to gouge my eyes out, because I then found out that every single student used the same fucking script and, like, all had the same code, so there was no chance that the rivals were getting made in a timely manner. Or at all. There are 10 planned rivals, and I thought because the base map has been implemented and the core mechanics exist, and all the students exist, and they all have planned schedules and so on and so forth, that each rival implementation would be about 10%, maybe 8 to 9% of the total game's development. That would signal when it's getting ready to be completed. You could change that 10% to about 4 to 5% if he's correctly using inheritance, meaning that the game would be like 3/4 of the way through development at this point. Except when you start to factor in code that's so janky, it more often than not doesn't work, and then occasionally breaks out into a functioning game, or that it's so messy, it's easy to reverse engineer in than understand what it was actually intentionally used for. Or the bad practices that ignore the core principles of any coding language made after I was born, and then package that with the terrible time management and resources that just go towards superfluous things that just unbalance the game and its foundation. And I started to realize maybe the game isn't actually going to be released. I would very much like to say that the time spent developing Osana is not indicative of how much time it'll take to develop each other rival, because for any competent programmer, it wouldn't. Yandere Dev has done nothing to show that he is anything but completely incompetent. There is no chance in hell he develops this game completely in the next 3 years. So I went back and I changed my model and had a look at some other things, and in my opinion, with the final product being a fun, complete experience that does not look, feel, or run like an Xbox 360 demo, this game is maybe 6 to 10% of the way complete. In the process of researching for this video by watching Yandere Dev's content on YouTube, it started recommending me more coding channels, and go watch him, by the way. And it really made me think about the actual process of developing an indie game. Currently, by any way you want to describe it, the game is not out of the prototype stage. Like, it just isn't. So I thought, I wonder where this will put it on the development, timeline. So, I found this fun little chart on Wikipedia, and can you guess where in this little process it is? Can you guess where it comes in? No, you can't, because it's not actually on there. The first stage, which is like pre-alpha, describes a game that has representative gameplay asset and mechanics, which I have gone to great lengths in the past hour and a half to prove that it doesn't. The first playable, so to speak, is even described as having major gameplay elements, which I would describe as the rivals, and it doesn't have them at all. Fans have been, lulled into this idea that because they can play the game and they can physically see how it's changing, that it actually is moving forward at a reasonable speed. But it really isn't. The actual work being put into this, or the work time being put into this, and what you get in return, when you actually look at it, it's pretty much fuck all. This situation may remind you of early access games, which is now very synonymous with not being released, like the DayZ standalone that was in early access development for 5 years with no actual reason as to why. It was just like that. And even with the term early access being synonymous with a low quality final product and delayed releases and just lack of updates, I wouldn't even really consider Yandere Simulator an early access project, because even compared to the DayZ standalone that took 2 years to add grass, at least it has grass. We just have a flat texture of grass in Yandere Simulator. Isn't that so cool? I really get the feeling that because fans get to play these updates and they get to physically see the updates as they happen, that they're getting something. But they're fucking not. It's very much like how humans can't process the difference between a million and a billion, because we just think, oh, it's a different letter, and a million's a lot, and a billion is a lot. But in reality, a billion just fucking dwarfs a million. A million looks like a fucking penny in comparison. That is how inconceivable this kind of lack of development is. It is so hard to comprehend how little work has been done and how much there is to go. But when you compare it to any other game, it doesn't even fucking show up. The biggest thing I want people to take away from this is the difference between both Yandere Dev as a person and the state of the game, or really the lack of difference between now and 1.5 years ago. And while it is great fun to look at how Alex hasn't changed and how the game hasn't changed, I do think it's worth looking at the environment, the difference in the environment that he's developing the game in now and when he started, specifically with indie games, because in the past, not actually that long ago, indie games were pretty proportionate. They had a modest budget and they attracted a modest audience, with some exceptions. However, that was 2014 and the industry was still somewhat heralding Binding of Isaac and Super Meat Boy as the indie games, like the best ones, the quintessential indie games. But as the years progressed, it seemed like every 8 months we got a new the indie game to play, mostly due to the rise in power of consumer-grade development tools, like the Unity engine that he fucking uses. In 2014, we got Shovel Knight, which replaced Binding of Isaac and the Super Meat Boy as the indie game to play. But then in 2015, we got Ori and the Blind Forest, Undertale, 2016, Firewatch, Inside, Stardew Valley, Absolute, 2017, Hellblade, Night in the Woods, Hollow Knight, Hat in Time, Cuphead, 2018, Beat Saber, Ashen, RimWorld, The Messenger, Celeste, Deltarune, 2019, Untitled Goose Game, Risk of Rain 2, My Friend Pedro, and Disco Elysium, which is one of the greatest games I have played and undoubtedly the best written game I have ever played in my entire life. You have to check it out. You may know some of those games. You may have actually played most of those games, and you would have loved a lot of them. And every single game I just listed has started and ended development faster than Yandere Simulator. The only exception is Cuphead, because every single frame is hand animated, and it's beautiful. And also they took a break, and also it took 7 years. So if Yandere Simulator does not finish development by the end of this year, it would have taken longer, which isn't just depressing, it's fucking embarrassing for them. A surprising amount of those games were made or ported to Unity engine during their development. A surprising amount of them were made either without a Kickstarter goal or for a Kickstarter goal that was actually lower than what Yandere Dev has already earned through Patreon alone, not even counting YouTube ads. A Hat in Time specifically actually started development, then was put on hold, added more members, they formed a business called Gears for Breakfast, and worked on the game from multiple different countries, all for free, until they had a presentable product to show to Kickstarter, where they asked for money, and they got it, and they worked on it, and they finished all of that from the very start of development, with the break, then Kickstarter campaign, then finished the game quicker than Yandere Simulator, and guess what? It's one of my fucking favorite games of all time because it's goddamn amazing. In my opinion, the best example of this is Toby Fox, which many of you know as the creator of Undertale and Deltarune. He asked for $5,000 on Kickstarter. He got $51,000 as a result, which is still less than what Yandere Dev earned in 2017 alone from Patreon. Again, not including ads. Now, but that's not fair. Alex works by himself. He only uses a team of volunteers. Well, Toby worked almost exclusively on the game by himself. He only had another human touch the project in the form of art. He made the music by himself, which is fucking iconic now, and he developed the entire game on GameMaker, which I don't fucking care about your opinions on Unity Engine. Unity Engine with C# is pretty objectively more powerful than GameMaker. Now, he wasn't just recognized by Nintendo, which is essentially the grandfather of all modern video games, but he was respected by them. And Masahiro Sakurai, the creator of Smash, one of the most influential game directors and game developers that has ever existed and probably will ever exist. Like, holy shit. The man's a fucking god. But it really does show how quickly indie games are catching up to AAA titles, whether it be graphical fidelity or polish or gameplay or content richness or post-release support. It genuinely doesn't matter. Indie games at the moment can reach far more people than any other time in their past, and the bar for entry is rapidly dropping. Also, 3 days before filming this part, I actually purchased Bright Memory. I didn't know it was on Steam. I didn't even know you could buy it at this point, but I heard so much about it, I bought it, and I fucking love it. I think it is absolutely outstanding. And the reason I'm saying this is because, as some of you may know, Bright Memory is being created by one man. That's it. The game looks fucking beautiful, it runs surprisingly well, and it is so much goddamn fun. And it was made in a different language. And it has good English. Better English than Yandere Simulator. The fucking competition is destroying him. In 2015 and 2016, Yandere Simulator was in contest with other indie games, and it was lagging behind. It's 2020 now. Yandere Simulator is no longer in the competition. It barely had anything of worth 4 years ago. It has nothing left now. It barely just stopped having to share its core idea with another game, a fan game actually, which had to shut down development. And while the developer does defend Yandere Dev and Yandere Simulator, which I don't agree with, fucking obviously, if there is any way in the future that you could support this game, if you could follow its development, if it ever comes back and you think it's interesting, I would say show interest. Try and help. Because while he does defend Yandere Dev, his game is the shining fucking example of everything wrong Yandere Dev is doing. The landscape for games development is full of people just filled to the brim with passion, not just for their projects, not just for their games, but for gaming as an art form. Creating and finessing experiences for the player, pouring unbelievable amounts of care into their projects. Care that Alex doesn't fucking have. It's pretty goddamn obvious that almost everyone outside of the industry and everyone inside of the industry can do a better job than him. Like, he's not good at his job. He barely fucking cares about his job. There is barely a place for him with passion involved. With such little passion now, there's fucking nothing. There was barely a place for him 4 years ago, there's not a place for him now, and he's not releasing it now. In one of his videos, he murders, hacks apart, and wears the skin of quite a famous Miyazaki quote, which basically says in a unbelievably cringy way that a rushed Osana would be bad, but a delayed Osana would eventually be good. And I'm saying this from the most depraved, bottom-dwelling part of my heart. The game is shit. It doesn't matter. It does not fucking matter. He is delusional and is a goddamn moron. The game is not going to be released. It just isn't. If it ever does get released, it's going to be torn apart by the most pathetic indie early access bullshit on the market. The game sucks. The only reason the game continues development is to line his fat fucking pockets, because he doesn't care if the game is released or if the game is good. He wants the game to be anime, and he wants the game to be what he wants. He doesn't fucking care if people enjoy it. He says he does, but he doesn't actually believe that. I mean, for God's sake, if he actually gave a shit about releasing a product, good or bad, just releasing a product before the majority of us fucking die, he would have handed off development to somebody else. He would have handed off development when it was handed to him on a silver fucking platter, dude. It was given to him. He was given the best possible outcome from such a shitty product, and he fucked it up. The game was and is a failure, which is so impressive because it hasn't even fucking been released. The only reason it isn't the most prevailing case study to show what not to do during games development is because it technically hasn't finished yet. You can't call the Hindenburg the greatest disaster of all time if it's only halfway to the ground. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it greatly. It was hard enough to make the video this long. I imagine it would be quite hard to watch it all this way. Don't send hate towards him. Obviously, you already know that. You're not stupid. But don't support him if you do. And just, dear fucking God, do not support him. Please, I'm begging. I'm on my fucking knees. I'm not on my knees. You can see that. You can see me physically. But metaphorically, I'm begging. If you liked the video, like it, like with the button, press the button and then subscribe and then put on the bell. I don't know how to turn on the bell, but do it.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to The Right Opinion, the home of a twat with too much free time, and as I'm sure many of you know, I am a gamer. It is a bona fide fact at this point. From my early period throwing knife montages to my entourage on GTA 5, my gaming skills are seldom equaled, and certainly not by anyone who I am covering today. I am the epic gamer your parents tell you about, so you better hide your wife. And in true gamer fashion, we are going back to the world of video games with one of my most requested topics of all time, and that topic is Yandere Simulator, an anime-based game. Anime, my favorite. What do people who like anime talk about? Hello, fellow anime watchers. Ooh, I'm gonna level with you guys here. One of my most commonly asked questions is if I watch anime, and although I have seen a couple movies when I was younger, Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, I haven't really had the chance to enjoy much of it. Although I've heard great things and I really do respect the art, some of it looks truly beautiful. Now, anime has been relatively popular since the early 20th century. It obviously originated in Japan and often represented the cultural zeitgeist. The development of digital mediums has allowed the art to flourish and expand into new genres. One of those, of course, is the video game genre. There are many anime video games, and it was in the video game heyday of the 1980s that anime-inspired video games and video game-inspired animes rose to prominence. Since then, their popularity has continued to extend beyond their borders, with the style attaining international prestige amongst a variety of audiences. I also want to take a moment to talk about manga, which is typically used to refer to comics and graphic novels, often created in the Japanese style. Manga precedes anime, and although mangas may be made reflecting an anime style, they are by no means the same. However, there is overlap, and that overlap can be demonstrated in many characterizations. This is where we meet the Yandere. Yandere is a portmanteau, which is our word of the day, of the words yanderu and dere dere. Yanderu meaning sick and dere dere meaning infatuated, deeply in love. So combined you reach the lovely idea that a person is in love to a sick extent. They will do anything for their senpai, even if that means often less than charitable activities. This personality trait is attributed to manga characters. However, it has gained popularity in anime as well, with many characters being modeled around that mold. The psychotic behavior, often paired with a cute design and sometimes demeanor, seems to be a good contrast that has become quite the rave. But it wasn't until one very cheeky game developer had a very cheeky idea. How about we make a whole video game from the perspective of a yandere? That cheeky game developer was a person by the name of Alex Mahan, currently operating under the very fitting name of Yandere Dev. He was an independent developer hailing from California. He has a degree in animation and was previously known under the name Eva Zephon, where he'd worked on the game of Lunar Scythe. However, in spite of receiving some initial interest within forums, it didn't come to fruition. That was previously his most renowned project, but he has been a resident of the online world since the mid to late 2000s, working on various concepts. One I found was a game called Shader. Lots and lots of fun. It appears that Yandere Dev was a man with many ideas. So let's talk about the idea that has brought us to this titular game. He conceived the idea of Yandere Simulator in 2014, pitched it to the internet, and allegedly after receiving positive feedback, decided to initiate development, starting a YouTube channel to document this development and progress. The YouTube channel, like all channels, was a bit slow at first, but in perspective gained subscribers at a relatively rapid pace, catapulting his content and the respective project into the public eye. It wasn't too long before other larger creators gave the game a burst of publicity, including PewDiePie, Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, and IHA's Cupquake. Given its accessibility, even in the early stage of development, Yandere Simulator was pushed towards the spotlight. And although it was not remotely near finished, many were more than willing to let this slide, considering that it was an independently funded venture. And sometimes true quality does indeed take time. He would typically upload content that would provide updates and ideas and was interactive on social media. However, it was a lot to do for one person. With this in mind, in 2014, Yandere Dev also set up a Patreon to support this endeavor, and it gained a reasonable amount of donors, at one point totaling $5,000 a month. With the production in full motion, new ideas ready to be worked on, plenty of traction and support from the community members, and even the odd volunteer along the way, everything seemed to be going perfectly fine. However, if it was a perfect story, we wouldn't be here today. If you went by his YouTube channel, it's unlikely you'd see many issues. Yandere Dev has now amassed over 2.6 million subscribers, his content appears to receive universally positive feedback from his audience, and his subreddit is a place of joy and epic anime memes. But this hasn't changed the fact that there have been many videos equally well received, dishing out some hard-hitting criticism, and numerous threads outside of the Yandere Dev chamber. You see, our friend Alex here seemed to have a lot of creative ideas, which definitely gave hope to the project on principle. However, as time passed, in spite of the notion that these ideas were receiving support, many began to become frustrated with the lack of progress being made on the game. 1 year passed, 2 years passed, 3 years passed, 4 years passed, and people didn't feel like they were seeing results. Now, many games take a long time, and with one developer, it was obviously not expected to be completed too quickly. Rome wasn't built in a day. However, many began to challenge whether this project was comparable to Rome, or whether it was more of a, well, Pompeii, with criticisms going after his management, development, and even basic ability in the pursuit of this vision. There were a diversity of criticisms to cover on this front, but many also claim that Yandere Dev's response was regularly documented to be lacking the filter that many creators may have when dealing with criticism. This led to additional criticism for his demeanor and attitude, with many stating that his hostility and often censorious response to criticism shows an arrogant and entitled side to him that he hadn't earned yet. Others who defended him said his responses were just those by an individual under a lot of pressure to deliver a game that has been weighing on him for a long time. Add this to a load of other drama regarding attitude and treatment of those around him, responses, alleged harassment, all escalating in severity, and you ended up with a very messy case indeed that came to a head in the year of 2018. If you're confused, don't worry, I'll do my best to get through all of it, and maybe we'll make some more friends along the way. Full disclosure, Thaf9, my good collaborator friend, put out this tweet which did significantly well in the Twitter sphere. And in a reply, he then stated that I was making this video, which led both Yandere Dev and a prominent critic of his to reach out to me. Overall, they had quite little impact on my script, but as always, I will put it out there and I will clarify that unless you're someone like Austin Jones, I'm not here to bite your head off. There's going to be a lot of criticisms and opinions from me, but as always, I encourage everyone to form their own. I'd also stress that some of this criticism is retrospective. You'll know by the tense I use. There is no guarantee that individuals involved feel the same today about a lot of these things, but these instances have had a butterfly effect onto the current situation and thus cannot be ignored.
Now,
let's talk about the video game that was almost completely derailed by internet drama. Ladies and gentlemen, it's gamer time. Given that the root of this video is the game and the origins, I think it's most appropriate that we begin there. Yandere Simulator as a concept was conceived around the 2014 period. Now, at first, Yandere Dev was a one-man band working on the project. He may have had a lot of drive, it's hard to tell completely. In a late 2014 interview with TechRaptor, he seemed to be pretty motivated. He had some decent ideas of what he wanted to do with the game, even if they weren't fully realized. But you don't exactly need them to be at that point. He also appeared to genuinely enjoy interactions with his audience over the delightful medium of emails, stating that it filled him with joy. At the end of the interview, he committed to making a game that would fulfill expectations and not let anyone down. But that is easier said than done. Projects on a large scale are always a challenge to an extent. You would inevitably go through periods of high and low motivation. Developing a game is never an easy process. However, there are also things you can do to facilitate the development of a game to maximize the efficiency and to make sure you're able to turn out high-quality product in good time without being sidetracked by menial issues. These are all important aspects of management without even considering PR. PR meaning that you need to build hype and turn out content that eventually justifies the hype. Now, Yandere Simulator is clearly a neat concept that is popular with many people, but it's also just a game, and given the fact that the developer hasn't exactly released any other acclaimed work for people to build off, in spite of its popularity, a trust in this developer and his ability to deliver a game has to be earned. With the almost immediate success of Yandere Dev, on principle, it seemed like there was a lot to celebrate. When a concept is popular and takes off, you have a lot of momentum, and a lot of people and businesses wanting to provide their services. However, if you're not prepared for this success, then it can yield many problems for anyone. Probably one of the best examples of this is child stars. Now, children need to be represented in media to an extent, and many of them deal with it reasonably well. However, for those who have been thrown into the spotlight at such a young age, whether it was due to a hit song or an iconic film performance, many don't deal with the sudden spotlight and pressure too well. Many end up in rather uncharitable places. In many instances, it's the case of peaking so early and having so much pressure to maintain that. In other cases, it's simply not being prepared for the responsibility the success brings. Although Yandere Dev is by no means what one would consider a child star, the Yandere Simulator's spontaneous success was somewhat equatable, and I don't think Yandere Dev was remotely ready for what it meant, not just as a creator but as the developer of a game. Although the 2014 origin was pretty relaxed, 2015 was met with a huge spike in attention, with the aforementioned creators showcasing the game to millions of fans. Publicity can be premature, and for Yandere Simulator, it was. Let me explain why. As noted, the build-up of a game is partly about hype. Typically, the discovery of a new game or a new piece of media will lead to a process where we either discard that discovery and leave it behind, or we become more invested and we fall down whatever rabbit hole that game has. Nonetheless, it's unlikely our venture down that rabbit hole would last forever. Eventually, we will hit a wall where we can no longer find any new information, and the information that we already know no longer engages us. For some people, this takes longer than others, and in a way, that's all right. Now, when we hit that wall, we have one of two responses. We can leave the source of what we know behind and continue with our lives, destined to fall down another rabbit hole eventually, or we can try and obtain new information by either creating it ourselves or trying to get it from the creator. This is often represented by the sentiment of impatience. I'll return to that soon. However, I want to make the point that although Yandere Simulator was an interesting concept, and it was great that Yandere Dev had a lot of support in developing it initially, Yandere Simulator wasn't developed enough to be deserving of the publicity it received. Yandere Dev had very ambitious ideas for the game. At the time, the game, although you could roam around and do a few actions, some of which were fairly brutal and amusing in their shock value, there was no deeper substance. This meant the game built hype almost immediately, yet off the back of mostly very superficial elements that wouldn't keep people engaged for a prolonged period. With the hype and the influx of new donors on the Patreon, Yandere Dev felt the pressure to maintain that hype, but as said, it's equally a PR job as it is a developer's job, so he liked to document progress, which is a time-consuming venture. In the short term, this was a sensible decision to make, but it could only work out long-term if the decisions that he made were backed by his ability. The decisions you make early on in the development of a game can have long-term effects at a later stage. You're setting the foundations. On top of this, as documented in a later video, any possible overhaul of the game seemed troublesome because the dev was worried that doing that would kill the hype.
The game is only alive for as long as people are interested in it. If people lose interest in the game, it's dead. If I release frequent updates, people will remain interested in the game. If I release updates slowly, people will lose interest in the game, and the game will get closer to death.
Given that so many people had experienced the game in some capacity, he clearly saw it as a challenge to revive the hype if he lost it. On the surface, many people would just see him as trying to resell the same product and wouldn't buy. I'm not going to go into complete depth regarding why his decision to continuously work on the project, since to maintain hype was eventually what has fundamentally crippled it. We'll cross that bridge when we reach it. However, as is inevitable, eventually, even if you're adding content, if there is no clear compilation of a plotline or overarching concept that people feel satisfied with, they will begin to become frustrated. Results are important. This was a huge problem for Yandere Dev, as he clearly prioritized certain components that, although may have provided progress in the moment, didn't necessarily provide the feeling of progress to his audience, particularly regarding the rivals, which to many was a significant selling point. Many people began to hone in on the fact that they didn't feel that Yandere Simulator was making the progress that it should have, with focus being overly centered on trivial matters and Easter eggs. This led to a basically placeboed sentiment of progress. The project felt like it was moving forward, but not in the ways that people would want it to. And by 2016, people were becoming restless, not just in the game's development, but in Yandere Dev's responses to these frustrations. How did he handle them? Well, let's talk about it. Now, Yandere Dev is an interesting person. His past shows that he was never the most socially apt, and when you watch his videos, you receive the impression that he isn't a massive, people-loving extrovert. So it's clear that he wasn't used to this level of positive attention. What this can do to a person is often varied, but given that he was always a bit of an oddball, the outcome wasn't exactly favorable. It's hard to say exactly where the switch was flipped, but at a point the feedback he received was no longer universally positive. He just stopped taking it with the decorum that one might expect him to, and when questions started being asked, they looked to you to answer. And let's just say he didn't exactly provide the desired responses. Arrogant is a word I see used a lot, and honestly, I completely understand why a lot of people had that opinion. Particularly in 2016, there are multiple screenshots of him being incredibly short-tempered with people who were making inoffensive to good faith criticism. He likes to use the word stupid a lot when describing anything he doesn't like, which in the wrong context can come across as rather superior. He would regularly clash with fans and critics alike. There was one situation where a fan was using a mod, and in response to this, Yandere dev kicked them from the game and left him an interesting message. Honestly, the video is a bit pissy, but it's obviously just a fan who's annoyed, and as videos go, it's fairly mild-mannered. It'd be reasonably easy to diffuse as a creator who the fan probably looks up to. Instead, Yandere dev responds by going on an angry diatribe about how this guy's a dumbass and he can F right off. When asked to justify this on Reddit, maybe saying, oh, it was just a heat of the moment thing, he stated that he was a passionate guy. He didn't really see any issue with that tone because he's a person who puts his all into this game. But it's not that simple. You can work hard on something, but that doesn't give you free license to be a colossal dick about it. This is what people mean when they speak about arrogance. They mean this attitude that someone is entitled to behave in such a way because of a greater cause that they are participating, when those things are not connected at all. You're not above certain principles of civility, and sometimes as an adult, as a public figure, people will hold you to much tighter accounts. This was a pattern with Yandere dev. I could go all over these examples, but I'd just be repeating myself. He frames it as honesty and him speaking his mind. But being honestly unpleasant is still being unpleasant. From the position he was in, it came across as arrogance as well. And as we'll find out later, when other people were unpleasant back to him, he didn't take it well. Nonetheless, this isn't my favorite example because eventually he didn't just go from responding badly to audiences who were impatient, he went to blaming them altogether. Until recently on the Yandere dev wiki, it stated that Yandere dev is best known for working really hard. It's almost like Yandere dev wrote it himself. Well, it's possible he did. However, as mentioned, many people have doubted that, given the slow progress. But in 2016, he decided to finally explain what was holding him up. What was Yandere Simulator's biggest problem? Well, you might be surprised. In this now removed video, Yandere dev blames emails for the prevention of progress on the project. Yes, emails.
You're probably sick of hearing about it by now. I'm certainly sick of talking about it. I'd love to stop bringing up this subject, but that can only happen when it stops being the biggest problem I'm facing.
In fact, he stated that he spends 8 to 12 hours a day on them.
I receive an avalanche of emails every single day. Depending on how much email I get, sometimes I spend between 8 and 12 hours going through my email, leaving me with no time left in the day to write code for the game.
Now, this is where the contradiction appears, because you must be thinking to yourself, well, these must be important emails if you spend so much time on them. Well, they're apparently not.
When you send me a stupid email, you are actively sabotaging the game's development. If you want this game to come out faster, you should not email me unless it's absolutely necessary.
In fact, throughout the video, he brands a high majority of these emails as stupid. He goes through each category of stupid emails. I do wonder how this video flew with anyone who isn't stupid, because there is no way that this makes any remote sense. I strongly dislike this video, whether it's the floating screen demon or his incredibly condescending tone, like he's talking to a bunch of 12-year-olds, though he might be, I don't know his audience. That's my feelings. But even feelings aside, this was about as watertight as the Titanic. Post-iceberg, of course.
The emails that I receive fall into 5 categories: volunteers, bug reports, questions, suggestions, and fan works.
I don't understand. Firstly, I'm surprised and somewhat skeptical that as many people as he said emailed him. Secondly, if so few emails that you receive are worthwhile, although they can be irritating in the moment, what was stopping him from either not bothering to open them or just opening, seeing what it's about, and once they've been deemed stupid by his standards, closing them again? stupid emails should take less than 10 seconds to check. And doing the maths, that means he was getting through a lot of emails in a day. And I found it hard to buy that he was just engaging with every last one.
If someone volunteers to help me out, and they don't include any examples of their previous work, I immediately delete their email and move on to the next one. I'm not going to waste my time typing an email that says, "I don't know whether or not I want your help. I haven't even seen what your work looks like yet. Show me what your work looks like first."
Oh wait, he does that too, so he might just be held up by the volume of emails. How many emails would he be receiving though? If he was receiving emails from so many people offering to volunteer, maybe he should have a volunteer for his emails. The video seemed like a rather mean-spirited way for Yandere Dev to scapegoat his own audience as the reason for his shortcomings. It's basic management, and blaming your audience because you can't handle it is just daft, implying that they are sabotaging the development. It's ridiculous. Making a simple request for less emails is fair enough, but telling people that sending emails is ruining the progress of the game is not just blatantly untrue, but do you not know about the Streisand effect? Why would you bring more attention to your emails? Pretty sure the Yandere simulator demographic aren't the biggest users of that medium of communication. Why would you remind them that it exists? It's like Superman making a video about how people shouldn't bring kryptonite near him. It's a waste of time. He wasted his time making a video about how emails are wasting his time.
Stop. Stop right there. After 2 years of this nonsense, I've already heard every single possible suggestion about how I can solve my email problem. There is no idea that you could possibly suggest that I haven't already shot down. So don't send me your brilliant ideas for how to solve my email problems, because it's not going to work. The only way you can help me solve my email problems is if you stop sending me emails.
You can see what part of time management I'm not really a fan of on his behalf. Even if the video is not intended as a scapegoat, it's clear he cares too much about things that can be handled fairly easily. As noted, he definitely has his limitations. However, capability to not spend whole days on going through emails should not be one of them. Of course, he didn't recognize that, and after listing out all the ways you shouldn't email him, does actually address some of the rather unpleasant interactions that he's had. However, he does it by making a monologue about how he's descending like some kind of anti-hero over Beethoven's No. 7 Symphony as if the boy thinks he's slick.
You know, there was a point in time when I was a very nice and patient person. But working on this game for the past 2 years has been very stressful, and it has sucked all of the niceness out of me. I no longer have any patience left. I've started responding to emails using very harsh and abusive language. I'm not proud of myself for doing this, and I'd like to stop. But it has become impossible to control my temper when I'm subjected to the same stupid garbage every hour of every day, despite the fact that I constantly ask people to stop. I'm only going to get grumpier and grouchier and angrier the longer this goes on. Please stop sending me stupid emails.
We all deal with stress in different ways, and it's okay to open up about these things, but Yandere Dev has a way of doing it that just seems to push blame onto other parties, even those who may admire him, and he's just so unnecessarily irritable that it makes it very hard for others to empathize. This was the first time it appeared that he had made a seemingly direct video addressing these issues, and it didn't give me hope for the coming years of research. It seemed to lack a sense of responsibility and understanding of the life he's living and what comes with it. But it was about to get even deeper than that. But let's talk more about his time wasting. I think this was somewhat deeper than just that though, and I want to talk about the nature of time wasting and why he was doing it. Yandere Dev had a problem known as chronic justification syndrome. It is the motivation to respond to every single criticism and suggestion to give the impression to your audience that you are on top of everything, you are in control. Do I think he's exaggerating in his emails video? For sure. I highly doubt he ever spent 12 hours a day on his emails, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did go about responding to various people who didn't require responses. There are more reasons for this that I'll also divulge soon. As a creator, you have to understand that with an increased audience, you will undoubtedly not be able to respond to every single person who criticizes you, because it is terrible time management. But also, unless you actively enjoy it, it's a mentally depleting activity once you reach a certain size. So wrapping himself up making videos, going through emails is obviously going to hold you up. Yandere Dev clearly feared people having an image of him that he didn't desire and therefore wrapped himself up in so much drama that it was almost laughable. Another heavily referenced example is this one where he exchanges an email with someone from the wiki admin team. I think it was Yandere Dev Wiki. Once again, I don't know the exact context of this, so I can't say if he has a point or not, but it doesn't sound like a particularly necessary problem. It's a case of control. He likes to control the narrative regarding how people perceive him. This is probably because in 2016 he was called out for his previous persona, who went by the name of Eva Zephon. I think that's how you pronounce it, though I could be wrong. And how this person had behaved in communities. Honestly, regarding this whole discussion, there's a lot that, I'm not going to hold against a person. All I'd say is he's quite strange, and I think many people felt the details were a little discomforting. There's a whole additional drama attached to this, which has been covered in some other very in-depth videos. He used to be active on the delightful hub of 4chan, which is where he originally pitched the idea for Yandere Dev. However, they had a field day with this situation and a fair few others. So now he hates them, despite the fact that he made the quote, most anti-SJW game in existence, and they rejected him. What a sad story. There were a few more serious claims we'll briefly touch on now. Most worryingly was the claim of paedophilia, for which his response left me feeling a degree of confusion. There's been a lot of discussion about whether he was in favor of certain less than palatable activities, though he does seem to have clarified them now. He also responded to the claim that he'd received news from an underage person, and I mean, it's all rather incoherent. Does seem like he's just adjusting a statement to the tune of the criticism that he was receiving, but there's not really too many more details to this. There was one account against him, and although a detailed testimony, there's no verifiable physical proof, so do with it what you will. On top of this, there was a pastebin detailing what is allegedly him trying to groom a younger individual, but pastebin's format doesn't make it a particularly reliable source, unfortunately. Now, it's fair to say that Yandere Dev is a strange character, and his internet history is not flattering to say the least, but it's also because of that it's not entirely clear if or where the truth ends and the lies begin in this case. We've seen a few situations where strange behavior is escalated with additional claims that turn out to not be entirely true, which is why it's hard to speak conclusively here. However, there is something conclusive it can tell us. Simply put, with all these old posts and new claims floating around, it would likely make Yandere Dev fairly paranoid, and explain why he may have felt the need to constantly defend himself because he wanted to stomp out criticism and to, quote, debunk the narrative while it was still fairly fresh. He didn't want it becoming the predominant perspective, though, as noted by this volunteer, it's probably worth remembering when considering working under him. If 2014 to 2015 was the high, 2016 was the hangover. Yandere Dev did not seem to coherently understand both sides of popularity. He had appeared to have faced these claims back in 2015, but it seems that people didn't really clock how this was affecting development of Yandere Simulator until early 2016. But okay, if his behavior was not how to deal with criticism, how should he deal with it? It's important to remember the source of the impatience, the game itself. The fact is that regardless of whether Yandere Dev was a good or bad person, a sensational majority of the fanbase just wanted the game. And there will always be a small minority who will criticize you for other things. Now, when you become successful, you need to adapt to that success. That's something that Yandere Dev clearly couldn't understand, because although he had hired volunteers and made a commitment on his Patreon that he'd be hiring volunteers after a certain amount, which he did hit at one point, given his lofty ambitions, he clearly didn't have a grip on balancing the outsourcing and what he wanted to talk about himself. One of the problems here is that Yandere Dev was, and maybe still is, rather possessive over his game. This is probably why he lashed out at people suggesting changes sometimes, or criticizing the choices that he made. It certainly doesn't justify it, but it makes a little more sense. However, being possessive also means wanting to retain creative control to a large extent. You want to see your game developed how you would like it. I understand that, but if you spend so much time working on your own image, of course you're not going to have anywhere near enough time to actually focus on the game. And this meant that even if changes were being made, the fact that Yandere Dev was in control meant there was a lack of pace. However, was that about to change? You know, at The Right Opinion, we are forgiving. I think it's important to let people have the opportunity to grow, as long as you haven't done anything too grim. It's not too late for a redemption arc, and following the Yandere Dev story, at one point you would have thought we might get it. Now, email bollocks aside, the root of the problem that anyone could draw from what we've looked at so far was organization. It's clear that given the output, if it wasn't laziness, which, you know, I'll entertain for the benefit of the doubt's sake, he clearly wasn't handling it well. And at the start of 2017, this seemed to be an issue that he was finally coming to terms with.
Let's talk about the speed of Yandere Simulator's development, the obstacles that are slowing down development, and potential solutions that could speed things up.
I mean, obviously, it's a complex discussion on principle. We know that Yandere Dev hires volunteers, so he's not necessarily doing this alone, and those volunteers are quite involved within the creation of the game.
90% of the things that you see and hear in Yandere Simulator would never have been possible without the help of those talented people. However, all of these amazing assets come at a cost. I am the game's director, producer, and manager. I am also the lead artist, and the lead animator, modeler, composer, etc. I don't create artwork or animations or models or music, but I am in charge of managing and directing all of the people who produce those things for Yandere Simulator. I am also the game's only programmer. I must perform all of the responsibilities that would normally be performed by about 10 different people if this was a real game company.
In spite of this, he is still heavily involved in managing each area. As the director and the manager, he needs to make sure it comes together to make a cohesive vision, something that, on principle, I do empathize with. This is covered extensively in parts 1 and 2 of a set of videos that cover the delays of the game, and exactly how he plans on resolving those problems. Wow, we were making progress. So how did he resolve those problems? Let's talk about it. In a pair of videos at the start of 2017 titled "What's Taking So Long?", he responds to the rhetorical question that many of his audience have asked. However, he doesn't throw any tantrums, he doesn't lose his cool, nor does he try and pin it on emails. He explains the problems of his job and how they and other factors influence how he manages his workload. So in a final, deeper analysis of his problems, he looks at a few solutions.
In the past, I placed a strong emphasis on low-hanging fruit. In other words, features that could be implemented within 2 weeks, with minimal assistance from volunteers. So, for a long time, I was able to add significant new features to the game every 2 weeks. But eventually, I ran out of low-hanging fruit to implement. The next step was to work on the medium-hanging fruit, which required more collaboration with volunteers and more programming work than before. This is when features started to take 4 weeks or several months to implement. The fruit that I'm aiming for now, Osana Najimi, is the highest fruit on the tree and requires me to spend extensive amounts of time speaking with volunteers, which leaves me with almost no time to actually write code.
Now, some may question some of the statements that he makes in this video, particularly pertaining to his workload, and those questions would be completely justified. But whether he was being honest or not, he at least seems to grasp that the current rate of progress is unsustainable.
Even though I devote almost every single hour of my life to Yandere Simulator, I've made 0 code-related progress on Osana over the past 2 weeks, because of all the other things that take up my time and require my attention. I have no problem managing a team of people, and I enjoy programming, but there simply aren't enough hours in the day to manage a team of people and make significant progress with the game's code. I think that the most elegant solution would be to hire someone to take my place as the game's lead programmer, so that I can focus exclusively on being a director/producer/manager, while someone else writes all the code. I have specialties, but I don't specialize in most of the stuff that Yandere Simulator needs the most. I put forth my best effort, but if a more experienced programmer had been in charge of writing Yandere Simulator's code, they probably would have done a bunch of things way differently.
The general tone of this video outlines that he's going to begin making inquiries regarding the outsourcing of various tasks, so he doesn't have to manage everything himself. He's seriously contemplating handing over control in executive areas. That, for many developers, may be a brave move, but it was a necessary move to him, because by keeping the production public and the game accessible, he had a pace that he had to maintain, and if he felt like he couldn't stop, it would not only sacrifice the speed of development, but the quality as well. However, how he would hand over control is another question. Let's discuss the possible methods that he presented. The first one was a crowdfunding campaign. Yandere Dev was planning to do a crowdfunding campaign at some point in the future regardless. This plan merely involved moving the campaign forward and hiring a team to work on the project earlier. Now there are positives to this, such as the fact that it allows him to retain control over the greater product. Even if he's assigning roles to other people, this would allow work to be completed faster and maintain hype for the upcoming game while staying in line with his model. Nonetheless, it's also possible that at this point, people would feel insulted that he is once again asking for money on top of his Patreon, and the amount they've been waiting already would not justify this. The crowdfunding campaign was something he really should have been doing back in 2014. It's also possible that he may not have been able to raise the money at all, and that may be quite embarrassing for him as a developer.
I could forget about Osana, launch the crowdfunding campaign immediately, assemble a team, begin refactoring the game's code as soon as possible, and then release Osana after the refactoring was complete. But I'm not sure if you guys would really want this.
The second solution was that he contracts with another company to finish the game. The benefits of this were that he wouldn't have to ask for money from the audience, and thus avoids them receiving the impression that he's exploiting them, and he has the stability of a larger business supporting him if he ever feels like he can't hold up the project himself. It's more of a mutual support system. Nonetheless, this came with its own problems, particularly if this was done over contract. Giving up certain creative controls may lead to the sacrifice of one's vision, something that Yandere Dev was notoriously possessive over. It also led to being bound into a contract that, under strain, may cause the whole project to collapse. Throughout this video, Yandere Dev clearly paints himself as very skeptical towards businesses.
I've already been approached by multiple companies who have expressed an interest in getting involved with Yandere Simulator's development in exchange for a cut of the game's profits. They've proposed deals that involve me giving up 50% of the game's profits, or losing ownership of the game's intellectual property, or removing certain features from the game. These terms are all very unappealing to me.
So it seems that whatever option he wants to choose, there is a degree of reservation regarding them. That was a lot of pressure, but at the end of it all, it was an ultimatum. If Yandere Dev continued to try and do the project alone, the time it would take for the video game to be released anyway would kill the hype regardless. So he stated that he was prepared to take the plunge. There was one more option that he presented, but I'm gonna save that for later. Yandere Dev conducted a poll with these options, and the fandom decisively backed him to remain on the current trajectory. But the problem was, although preferable to many, maybe even to Yandere Dev himself, it wasn't sustainable. Yandere had continuously committed to wanting the game released by 2019, and there was no scope of that happening if he continued in the current direction. However, was this all smoke and mirrors, or was he going to follow through on a commitment for once? Well, not too long after, he posted a video which announced that Yandere Simulator was about to enter a collaboration phase. Alongside this, the criticism of the companies in the previous video had been reeled in a little.
During this part of the video, I portrayed companies as evil, greedy entities that would steal money from me, take full possession of Yandere Simulator, and censor the game. It was a bad idea to portray companies like this, because not every game developer or game publisher is like that. The language that I used to describe companies in my previous video probably had a strong effect on the poll where I asked people what they wanted me to do. Let me take a moment to talk about companies in a non-biased way. Over the past 2 weeks, I've spent a lot of time speaking with a company that has experience developing games, publishing games, and also working together with struggling developers to help them finish their games. This company has a very good reputation among indie devs, and their name came up numerous times when I asked other developers to recommend a good company to work with. When I asked people for their opinion on this company, nobody was able to tell me a single negative thing about them.
Yandere Dev had made the decision to go towards a publisher or developer rather than a crowdfunding project. Who though? Well, a publishing company named TinyBuild. TinyBuild are an independent games company based in Washington, the state, not the city. Well, there are multiple cities named Washington, but you know what I mean. They're the developers of the game No Time to Explain. However, they've also published games from all over the globe, and you've probably heard of some of them. TinyBuild was probably one of the better options. They have experience and credit within the industry. However, they're not too corporate, and that might lend to some more trust between the collaborators in question. Yandere Dev himself was very optimistic, stating that he'd never heard about any bad experiences with the company and that many had recommended them to him. His partnership with TinyBuild would assure many new developers coming onto the game and working under his management. He would still be the lead designer, he would still have the final say, there was no power being taken away from him. The only catch was that there would be no content that may provide it with an adults-only rating, but that was something that he had anticipated regardless. Overall, the plan was for TinyBuild to take over many of the more business-related matters on top of the development aspects that Yandere Dev felt like he was weaker in.
I have no experience hiring people, drafting contracts, trademarking things, or any of the other business-related or law-related aspects of game development. I'm good at making prototypes and implementing low-hanging fruit very quickly, but I'm not really experienced enough to write complex character AI or do some of the other complicated things that are needed to make Yandere Simulator become a reality. So it makes perfect sense for me to partner up with a company like TinyBuild and let them handle all of the things that I'm bad at while I focus only on the things that I'm good at.
Yandere Dev also clarifies that this partnership mostly covers creative resources, rather than monetary funding. Thus, although crowdfunding may still be a possibility, he would eventually charge people to play the alpha version of the game, once he considers it complete enough to begin charging. This is a decision that he would make after he had finished Osana. He also said he would not be changing much monetarily, and YouTube ad revenue alongside Patreon was still his only sources of income. However, one of the most significant developments was that TinyBuild would be providing Yandere Dev with a programmer who would sort out a new code for the game while he was working on Osana. Progress would be slow at first, but eventually, as according to this very professional graph, the pace would pick up as TinyBuild take over more assets, leaving Yandere Dev to focus on his executive role. Wow. Like a jigsaw, it was all finally falling into place.
Except it didn't, it kinda failed.
Well, yeah, but we're meant to build up the tension.
Yes, I'm sure your viewers are on the edge of their seat waiting for me to pop up, aren't they? What we're supposed to do is talk about coding. Do you know about programming?
I'm a gamer first and foremost, and I always will be.
Huh. I don't see you as the gaming type. Okay then, let's talk about the failure of the TinyBuild partnership, shall we? A game development cycle is the most turbulent time of the year. There's a saying when it comes to game development: if all else fails, hire someone to do the job for you and then reap all the benefits for being a sole developer while leaving the poor person in the dust to become a ghost in the industry. I made that one up. But the point is that it's extremely rare for someone to work on a massive game completely and utterly on their own with no assistance whatsoever. And when someone does and releases it to a wide audience, there's a chance that it could turn out really, really good or really, really bad. I've talked about this in my own video, but for the uninitiated, Yandere Simulator is a game that runs on the Unity engine. Before you get your super-powered panties in a twist, I'm not slating the Unity engine itself. Games that are made on the Unity engine, like any other engine, all have varying degrees of quality. You only noticed the bad asset flips because the developers didn't have enough money to remove the watermark at the beginning of the game and have to hang their heads in shame as the dreaded grey screen shows up saying that yes, This game is indeed made on the Unity engine. Going back to Yandere Simulator, and the most common complaint about the game was that it runs like an athlete in co-op, but he's got a third leg protruding from his stomach, and he runs by constantly front flipping down the track, and the buttons also included the mouse keys on the side. The game was horrible to run, even on a beast rig. Loading up into the lobby and you're greeted with less frames than viewers on the standard mixer stream, and all you could really do to keep your PC from bricking itself was look at the floor. Of course, this spells problems for the casual player with a less than stellar PC and significant lack of YouTube money, as opening the game would open your entire town to nuclear destruction. There are quite a few reasons why this is an issue, especially in Yandere Simulator, but the biggest one goes down to the way the game's being programmed by the dev. If you looked at the game without any knowledge as to its background or how it was even created, you'd probably think that it could easily run on a calculator, but if you played it, you'd probably be lucky to get a frame in. But why is this? I touched upon this in my own video, but if there was one thing Yandere dev wasn't really the best at, it was programming his game properly to work efficiently and on all devices. The code looked like a complete nightmare. It was like the whole concept of variables was unheard of to him. Before you guys brandish your pitchforks and call for my public execution for being mean about his coding when he never had any experience before, let me explain why a lot of people take a big issue with this programming. Yandere Simulator has been in active development for about 5 to 6 years, and he's been programming the game the entire time when he wasn't live streaming video games or making more videos explaining the lore. He's being paid the same wage, if not more, than professional programmers who by now would have completely finished the game and done several patches to it, and released it on the Nintendo Switch and Nokia Brick. He's commented that he knows his code looks awful and that he only codes on areas that aren't used frequently. If he's saying that, then that means he clearly knows how to code properly, so why isn't he doing it? The code looks like a complete mess! In the code, he uses the update function, and he fills it to the brim with things that the game will do at that specific point. The problem is that with this function, said things would run every single frame. I can go into more detail about the coding, but several programmers have made comments and points about it, so I'll leave notes about what the professionals say with Troz so he can add it to the really large amount of sources that's been compiled for the video. Now, where does TinyBuild come in? TinyBuild offered to extend their services to Yandere dev, as any professional programmer would look at the code that he's done and projectile vomit all over the screen. Initially reluctant to have another programmer do a better job than him, he eventually caved and a developer was sent to work on the game, with TinyBuild hopping on board to publish the game should it get released. Good coding is meant to be flexible, quick and efficient, so that when needed, you can make quick optimization edits and make sure the game doesn't murder your Intel Atom processor from 1923. This is what the TinyBuild developer ended up getting up to, optimizing hundreds of lines of code to make sure that the game runs slightly better than it did before that point, which meant removing the depressing amounts of else-if arguments in the code. The partnership lasted a while, with the programmer allegedly redoing most of the code of the game, until he was suddenly dropped with a statement made on Yandere dev's Patreon, pretty much saying that the code couldn't be read because it was too simplified and there was a lack of else-if statements to boot, as it would hinder the progress of him making his game. At this, TinyBuild packed their bags and left the project, probably not seeing a completion date for the game this decade or even century. With their departure and the programmers yeeting off the project, Yandere dev was now free to execute an extra 2048 lines of code in a single update function to run every single frame, and finish his plan to cause global warming all over again and raise the overall heat of the earth with the amount of fried PCs the game would end up causing over the next few years. But this wasn't the only thing that Yandere dev had been accused of neglecting. Nay, he had more trouble under his belt that even more information has been shown as recent as a week before writing this segment, and that heinous crime is stealing assets. Allegedly, it's been stated that he's been stealing assets for his game, and while I wouldn't put it past him to do such a thing, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt in this situation. Throughout the entirety of the development cycle of the game thus far, Yandere dev has promised that the models and assets that are currently in the game will be replaced down the line with more polished models from the ground up. The very model for the main character of the game is taken straight out of the Unity asset store, and quite a lot of the assets around the school were taken from various places from the internet. Now, standard development practices list that without a license or specific written permission from the owner of the assets as well as credit, you cannot monetize your game whatsoever. You just got caught using that one font that you downloaded from DaFont years ago on a used park bench asset that you forgot even existed? Well, too bad, someone found it and now you're thousands of dollars in debt and your game's been banned from every single marketplace ever conceivable. Now, Yandere dev didn't want any of this to happen to his game. He was planning on making big bucks and selling it on the biggest marketplaces known to man, and the Epic Game Store. So he promised that the models of of the game would change down the line. Now, you guys must have heard from either me or Tro earlier on that Yandere Dev makes use of volunteers to keep the game going on. He isn't a one-man band, the man needs help. And what better way to get help than with people who are sacrificing their free time in order to provide you with some assets to improve your game? Which is exactly what one artist did for him. On Twitter, an artist named Maika recently made a thread unearthing the turbulent tales of her encounters with the dev. She had improved the character designs of the game to make them 50 times more original than the original concept, providing concept art for Yandere-chan amongst other things. She states that she was asked to modify the in-game model, design posters, illustrate his YouTube skits, redraw another artist's work because he didn't like the quality, design skins, and contribute some props. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, that's a whole lot of work, surely she didn't do all of it. Well, she ended up doing the entire thing and submitted it. Now, before you get your pitchforks out again and blast the artist for working for free, you guys need to understand that at the time she was still a teenager and worked on multiple jobs in addition to trying to build her online presence and portfolio. And besides, it was the perfect opportunity to work with the Yandere Dev, just as long as she got credit. The video was released, and to the shock and horror of a grand total of no one, there was no credit in the video. She had to email Yandere Dev to get credit for the work she did, and when she asked, he told her no, citing nepotism as a reason. In this thread, Maika also shows the emails that Yandere Dev sent her, and I'll just present these without comment. Discounting the melodramatic nature of some of these emails, why does there need to be a back and forth about this? Just credit the artist? Other games don't seem to have this issue, so I don't understand what the problem is here. Especially if the artist didn't ask for payment or anything, just credit. The work that was handed to her was very intense, and that's enough work for a full-time freelancer gig. So the fact that she didn't ask for money in the first place makes it even more essential that you give her full credit for the work she did immediately on publication. All in all, the rampant mismanagement of the game seems to never end, and hopefully there's going to be some improvements to the way the game is run. Yeah, I'm not too sure about that one. But at least this was a fun revisit to the antics of Yandere Dev. Back to you in the studio.
If I hire an experienced veteran programmer with experience in the Unity game engine to take my place on Yandere Simulator, he's not going to want to work with my code and pick up from where I left off. He's going to want to rebuild many of the game's most important systems so that the game has a proper foundation.
That's gonna be a massive yikes from me. Yandere Dev was never particularly well trained in the area of development. Although he described himself as strong at implementing the quote low-hanging fruit, this was probably simply because it was something he was capable of doing using a less than ideal method. In some future posts, he said that he couldn't talk about the deterioration of his partnership with TinyBuild, although he later said something, so I'm not sure what the terms of his legal contract were. In summary, it appears that Yandere Dev had compatibility issues with a more efficient system, and I think that can be a problem. He would often go on in the future to frame it as a subjective difference, despite admitting to being poor at it in previous videos. And I don't think it's merely creative differences. So let me explain. Okay, so I play squash. It's a fun game. For most squash players who want to win matches, there are a general set of principles that your style of play should adhere to. We all have personal touches that help us develop our own brand, but at the end of the day, if you play in a style that is too incompatible with the game of squash, chances are you won't win the game. This is a general principle that you can follow into most professions and hobbies. Creating a video game stems from the same general rules. It is likely that we have our own personal flair and approach, but there are general rules that will alter the outcome in a possibly favorable and unfavorable way with your audience. At the end of the day, the only person I'm playing a squash game for is me. There is no one else out there who is invested in my performance, so I'm not expected to perform. However, if I was contracted or if I was playing for a league team, I think it'd be reasonable for me to adhere to a few rules to make sure that my performance in the task was somewhat efficient. Now, Yandere Dev could develop a game how he wanted to on principle. However, he also had a lot of people who had an implanted expectation based on industry standards. And given that he was often appealing to that audience for the funding and support, you'd think he would have been more focused on delivering. When his initiative received a groundswell of support in 2014, what he should have done is worked out how to improve his skill at programming before then working out how to develop the game in a constructive way rather than basing his developments off what would build the most hype and just doing it his own way, which only postponed the eventual confrontation of the unfinished game. When a solution had finally been calculated, almost 3 years after the development began, his previous approach to creating the game made working with what he had incredibly difficult, and his prevailing stubbornness when presented with a possible solution eventually prevented the progress that may have been achieved. It reminds me of an old post he made where he turned some harsh coding feedback he received from his idol into a Batman's origin story.
I turned the hatred into a burning passion.
It's a daft post, and he did actually admit he was wrong in 2015, so I'm not going to hold it against him. But I don't think he thought about the feedback enough because we ended up in this mess regardless. It's hard to fully empathize with him because to me it seems he must have apprehended these problems in advance and pushed on regardless. Instead, by going for the quote low-hanging fruit, it meant that the problems with his style didn't become apparent until after a significant amount of development had taken place, because he was so focused on that and it pushed to a point where it was much hard to reverse, to the point where TinyBuild couldn't continue. Yandere Dev himself was too stubborn to learn how to adapt, and the progress of the game suffered for it. However, living in this world of denial, come 2018, he decided that actually all these factors that are basically self-evidential at this point were not to blame, and he had his own theory. In another condescending video, I don't know how he does it with that tone, called How Long Does It Take to Make a Video Game?, he presents his own version of events.
How long does it take to make a video game? The answer is, it depends on a large number of different factors, such as the genre, the budget, the size of the team, the complexity of the game, whether it's an original game or an imitation, and a bunch of other factors that you probably wouldn't have considered. It's not an exact science. You can't really create a formula that tells you exactly how long a game should be in development for, because each game has a different set of circumstances.
Let's break down the main points of the video then. The first one is that the length that a video game takes to be developed typically corresponds to the quality. He once again used a very compelling graph to demonstrate this. And although obviously it's quite easy to pick out the low sample number he uses, and the fact that obviously it would not be difficult to cherry pick this at all, as a point it's much easier to focus on the implication that somehow this, as a universal rule, can be applied to his game, even though he specifically opened with the statement that there were no specific formulas for the completion of a game.
So we've established that the more complex a game is, the longer it's going to take to develop it. Small teams usually stick to simple games. When a small team tries to make a large, ambitious game, the development can really stretch out for a long time. Do you see where I'm going with this?
After asserting that games that are longer in the making are typically higher in their complexity, particularly when they are comprised of small development teams, he goes on to say that the complexity of his game, Yandere Simulator, is comparable to a Hitman game combined with a Persona game. He then goes on to expand on all the complexities of this game, and I'm not particularly sold.
First, as the complexity of a project increases, it will become proportionally difficult to work on it. Every time you add a new feature, it will affect other features, create new bugs, increase the amount of time you need to spend waiting for the code to compile, increase the loading times of the game, etc. Something that was simple and easy to work on at the beginning can eventually become a nightmare that you are constantly wrestling with, where making even the smallest amount of progress becomes very time-consuming and difficult.
It's hard to deny that Yandere Simulator is an ambitious game in many ways. However, I certainly wouldn't say it's almost as complex as two renowned games combined, particularly when a lot of the actual results are not there. In 2017, Yandere Dev said that the simplicity or complexity of the game would be based on the amount of support it received, implying that he was willing to compromise on certain elements.
The scope of Yandere Simulator will be determined by the size of its budget. The more money we raise, the more time, work, and features we can put into the game.
But in this video, he clearly implies that it will be complex regardless of the outcome and uses it as a shield for the length it has taken to develop the game. Once again, it's a sacrifice of realistic goals for personal sentiments, and the condescending explanation of why everyone should deal with it. On top of the programming argument that Thaf9 has likely debunked in his part, Yandere Dev eventually talks about mental health, a very serious matter.
If you push yourself to work as many hours as humanly possible every single day, then eventually you're going to burn yourself out. You'll become too exhausted and fatigued to be productive. If you work on the same project for multiple years, you'll eventually get tired of it. This will lead to a loss of enthusiasm and motivation, which will cause you to become more easily distracted and less productive. If a group of weird people on the internet decide that they feel completely justified in treating you like garbage, and you're subjected to abusive treatment on a daily basis for multiple years, you'll become depressed, which will affect your productivity, which will cause people to call you lazy or a scam artist, which will cause you to receive even more abuse, which will cause you to become even more depressed and less productive, which becomes a never-ending cycle of abuse and depression. Your fan base won't know about this for a long time because you'll do your best to never speak of it. Eventually, your comment sections will be dominated by people who want to hurl insults at you and spew ridiculous misinformation that isn't anywhere close to being true. Maybe a handful of people will behave with dignity and respect, but an overwhelming number of people will be cruel and abusive.
I have to break this down because mental health in many ways is a subject close to my heart, but at the same time, there are a lot of layers to this. Firstly, let's talk about motivation. We have good days and bad days. I empathize there, but you also have to understand that if people feel that you are not keeping up with these things, particularly if they're supporting you monetarily, they're going to become impatient. And the problem with Yandere Dev is that he never explained himself in a way that was empathetic to people's concerns. That was his failing all the way back in 2016, and he hadn't amended people's concerns by this point either. How about the unjustified harassment that he had been receiving and how that demotivates him? Now, I would agree to an extent that honestly, there are people out there who are too obsessed with Yandere Dev, and he is quite the target. Nonetheless, as said, to imply it's those experiences that make you demotivated while not being able to take a step back from the internet and seeing the bigger picture is a weakness that has to be partly accountable to you. Asking where these obsessive individuals came from as if you think they just randomly threw a dart and landed on you is dishonest. I feel that a lot of these sentiments built from 2016, 2015, where they were jumped on by bad actors after a point is another discussion. He acknowledges that this is a small minority who are going after him, and he says that a lot of the people he has interactions with are positive, but never really defines those people from the harsher critics. I'd say it's probable that there were some people looking to stir stuff up, but it's only because sharks smell blood, and when some of Yandere Dev's behavior and responses started coming to light, they saw a guy who they could bait into lashing out and decimating his own image even further, and Yandere Dev just could never understand that. That's the other issue I take with this. His framing. He acts like he's avoided the drama and negative comments and acts like it's all flared up out of nowhere. He says he hasn't talked about it, but that's just a lie. There have been times when he's been too far involved, and the only reason more fans probably didn't know is because he does suppress a fair bit of it. And this led me to a new point, that I think social media harmed Yandere Dev and the simulator more than anything. Let's talk about it. YouTube is not the most fun environment a lot of the time. The feedback from people can be pretty negative, pretty depressing, and I completely empathize with how that might affect productivity. But as a game developer, if you're prone to responding badly to negative criticism, maybe a YouTube channel and multiple social media accounts wasn't the best idea. That doesn't justify any harassment, and I want to make that 100% clear. But from a personal perspective, it's clear that Yandere Dev cannot help himself but try and respond, whether that criticism was valid or not. And when he can't respond to it, he'll just try and censor it. The video that we just covered, in spite of its rather significant view count, only has approximately 740 comments, with a distinct lack of critical comments, even polite ones. And you're gonna have a hard job convincing me that no one posted anything remotely nuanced. At one point, it had 72 comments off over 800,000 views. Another place where censorship has been documented was the Reddit for Yandere Simulator, where many had also been critical of it. At the end of 2018, it was alleged that he had bought it, although the exact words in the Discord posts were, "in exchange for compensation." In the past, Yandere Dev had attempted to quash the claims against him by making a post on the subreddit, admitting he had attempted to buy it, but clearly this was not enough, with many people rebutting him at that point, alongside one now censored comment comprehensively responding and sharing some evidence of their own which shows Yandere Dev in a less than positive light, while proudly stating that they were pleased that the subreddit wasn't bought. However, this did not last. In the end, he purchased it. What was the price? $3,000 for a subreddit. Let that sink in. He had attempted to make his own subreddit too, but it seems that this was not enough due to the volume of people on the other one. Yandere Dev had made it no secret that he was not particularly fond of the Reddit community. In fact, he often doesn't seem particularly fond of many communities, but his post announcing his acquisition was quite daft, telling a story of a person who manipulated administrations of the subreddit into believing that Yandere Dev was an evil person, and then the harassment just spread like a disease, and it all became too much for him as a person. He writes, "What other game developer has had to deal with this? It's become anxiety-inducing to even look at the subreddits. Can you name any other game developer who has had to deal with this nonsense? All these other subreddits are just so lovely, and they don't have any issues. Why does Yandere Dev just receive this unprovoked backlash?" Looking at the archives, it's clear there was a lot of drama on his subreddit. And if you want to keep your subreddit away from drama, I'd understand. In August, I found posts about how they were going to decrease discussion of Yandere Dev and create a new dedicated Reddit for him. Sounds peachy. However, it seems that a large majority of what Yandere Dev is alleging happened earlier on in the year, and the most popular critical posts, although quite scathing, weren't really harassing. Although it's hard to tell exactly, as a large majority of them have been deleted. However, I did manage to dig up some of the censored posts, mostly following his How Long video, and a lot of them are pretty concise and some are just plain responses. Nonetheless, one trend I did notice was the promotion of a Patreon boycott following that video. And in that month, it seems that Yandere Dev lost over $1,000 in Patreon money, which probably bothered him a lot. There was also a Karma court case, which is like this court in Reddit. I don't think they have any legal jurisdiction, but it's a thing, and I'm not going to pretend to understand it. You guys do you. To summarize, there was some BS happening. To what extent, I'm not sure. His comments weren't the most encouraging. He wasn't really interested in whether the criticism was well structured or whether it was harassing, regardless of how he frames it. Yes, at the end of the post, he states that any public criticism of him can only be done in bad faith, as it means you're trying to stir up drama. And if you have any other criticism of him, you should email him. Now, if you want your subreddit to not be about criticism against you, you're the boss. It's a subreddit, not a democracy, and that's what I always say about these things. But with the context of the criticism that he'd been receiving, to many people this justification once again did not seem concerned about harassment, but more about a desire to control the narrative, rather than focusing on the damn game. I have a hunch that Yandere Dev felt that a lot of the criticism were mostly people pretending to care, and that it was a slippery slope to some of the harassment that he claimed to have been receiving. But for many, that theory just wouldn't cut it. The reason why public criticism exists, even on a personal level, is because Yandere Dev is a person asking for money and support on the basis of trust in his character that he will deliver a game. And if people feel that game isn't going to be delivered and that people's money would be better invested elsewhere, then they 100% have a right to say that publicly, because that is in the interest of every single person who has invested time or money into your project. Now, once again, although presenting himself as a very busy person, Yandere Dev managed to find time to moderate this subreddit. Many of the critical posts disappeared, and in spite of Yandere Dev's claims, he was very involved in the control of what appeared on his Reddit, because managing a subreddit is definitely what a person under time constraints to create a video game should be doing. Yandere Dev was very blessed to receive the feedback on his game back in 2014, and I can understand that when faced with this support, he decided to try and use social media to maintain momentum. However, he should have restricted his interactions maximum to YouTube uploads for what he was trying to do. Maybe if he was a bit better at responding to criticism consistently, then he would have been able to engage on other mediums. But there's a reason a large majority of game developers, even indie game developers, do not rely on public sentiment as buoyancy for a game alone. However, I have a feeling that Yandere Dev was aware, because as we saw with Tiny Build, he would have trouble without that public support. The fact is that in spite of Yandere's narrative of personal persecution, a majority of YouTube's audiences are a lot less pedantic than industry experts, funnily enough. And that fact was why a lot of the criticism didn't appear until much later, when people started looking at it with a more critical eye. If he'd have taken his concept to a larger developer or industry player early on, then he probably would have received some sharp technical criticism that could have averted these issues later on, if he had listened to them, of course. And in all fairness, in spite of the volume of criticism that he has been subjected to, his videos are still relatively popular. People are still engaging with his content, and the one thing that he hasn't censored, the like to dislike bar, is regularly heavily in his favor. It seemed like his tactics had worked in a way, although I feel this would have been less of a big deal if he just hadn't engaged it at all. He was certainly able to prevent the narrative spreading to the core of his support base. I make that statement with a level of reservation because his Patreon, which is probably a barometer of those closest to the game, shows a bit of lost faith, with its current amount being less than 50% than its peak. It seems that there are a lot more viewers who perhaps find more entertainment value in just watching the videos rather than directly monetarily supporting development of the game. Although Patreon isn't his only method of income, and he does stream and collect YouTube ad rev, which would be a very impressive amount if all his videos are monetized, although they probably aren't.
So we can attack this lady. Oh my god! Jesus Christ!
In many ways, Yandere Dev managed to shelter a lot of people from the criticism that he had received, and if not, he managed to hold them to one side of the narrative. However, the roots of the problem seem clear to me. In light of these shortcomings of the development of Yandere Simulator, people began to become restless, and that restlessness has manifested into certain behaviors, some of which are rational and some of which are irrational. But Yandere Dev's response was often less than rational. Let's begin to wrap this up. This video has gone into a lot of detail about the failings of Yandere Dev. Now I've laid it out, I hope it's clear to see why certain decisions led him to this ultimatum. It's a classic snowball situation, one where neither the creator nor his critics, and sometimes more obsessive followers, were prepared to yield, so it escalated. And when these situations transpire, one of the inevitabilities is that commentators are going to pick up on it. Now, going back to the start of 2018, this was definitely part of the attention that really bothered Yandere Dev. The video that was the harshest was the rise and fall of Yandere Dev, a 2-hour saga that spent a decent amount of time going through a lot of his worst old posts in crippling detail. It probably did upset Yandere Dev given how he'd hope it was behind him, and he probably felt he had responded. And he had to a degree. He wrote a lot of posts on his Tumblr attempting to, quote, clear up misunderstandings. I think some of his posts do clear up certain issues, but there are also two problems with these responses. Firstly, the structure. It would often involve him quoting without any context. This could allow him to create strawman arguments at will, and obviously reading it, many would argue that he did. The responses were quite general and thus never gave a sense of closure to a lot of specific situations that occurred. Secondly, the responses weren't easy to find. They were on his Tumblr, but they were spread out and hard to follow. If you wanted something specific, good luck. By doing this, it gave me the impression that he was typically just appealing to the fans that he already had, who would hear what other people are saying through Yandere Dev as well, rather than going directly to those sources. And on top of other comments such as the ones made on his Reddit post, I think he often viewed public critics as beyond conversion. Fair enough, but pushing away your critics requires your audience to have some faith in you. And as said, although he has an audience, financial support has taken a hit through organized boycotts and other creators spreading publicity. His responses often hit the weak point of being too vague to provide himself reasonable defense, but existent enough to draw more attention to them. Other commentators jumping on this didn't help his plight, often looking with a critical eye towards his rash nature. I've also tried not to harp on the content of these old posts too much, but it doesn't help that many of them are pretty unnerving. Even though, as I acknowledged, they were done a long time ago, at that point his sporadic and even dismissive responses would obviously sour many people. Now, I wanted to spend this final or nearly final part, please God let me finish, talking about this. Because towards the end of 2018, Yandere Dev continued to reflect on the criticism and hate that he had been receiving, and decided to make an over 20-minute video addressing it called Hate and Shame. Not the most valuable usage of one's time, but I digress. The video is an interesting one.
Imagine that someone decides to take all of these embarrassing moments from your past, put them into a list, and show that list to his friends. Then he claims that this list represents you. His friends believe him and develop a twisted mental image of you. They perceive you as a caricature of who you really are, with all of your flaws greatly exaggerated. Unfortunately for you, their hobby is ridiculing and shaming people, and they've decided that you would be a fun target. And so they start stalking you, They follow you everywhere you go, taking pictures of you, recording videos of you, and digging through your trash to look for anything embarrassing you might have thrown away. Sometimes they even try to directly provoke you, because they think it's funny if they get a reaction out of you. If you're an artist, they'll claim that you're bad at painting. If you're a chef, they'll claim that you're bad at cooking. And if you're a programmer, they'll claim that you're bad at writing code.
I assume this is meant to be an analogy, although it's hard to tell. The hate and shame video is basically 22 minutes of Yandere Dev talking from this disconnected perspective about his own personal experience. His purpose clear is to try and make people empathize with him and maybe give him some advice. I was going to say that his video shows a failure to distinguish between the online and real world, but then he goes to talk about the real world harassment that he alleges to have received.
After enough people have been convinced that you're an awful, terrible person who deserves to be ridiculed and scorned, you will begin to receive harassment. Prank calls, weird things being mailed to your house, getting spammed with pictures of animal abuse and bestiality, being stalked in real life.
The video made me feel two things: sad and manipulated. It's a depressing video, and this could be how Yandere Dev interprets the situation. He has this status that would obviously not make elements of the internet enjoyable. And there is a lot of personal stuff out there, but I also find it very manipulative, the use of generalizations, vagueness, and purely anecdotal content. It personally rubs me the wrong way. And I get that the internet can be a pretty toxic place. It sucks that there are always people out there a little too obsessed with you. And with something like Yandere Simulator and the sort of cult-like status it acquired, it's very easy for one of those avid fans to become sour and then be on an all-out crusade to get you, probably bolstered by some real sycophants on the more menacing sides of the internet. And that will probably spill into your real life. So I'm not saying for certain that this didn't happen, but my god, you don't feed the trolls. Yandere Dev was practically providing them with an all-you-can-eat buffet. In a later post, he stated that his video on emails actually led to an increase in emails. So I don't know why he thought a video on this topic would lead to any sort of de-escalation. These videos also had a tendency to spray fire at their targets. Although in a later post, Yandere Dev would claim that his video was mostly directed towards these trolls and harassers. In the video, he draws a clear link between the people who have criticized him as those who are also responsible for the harassment, implying that they are the people who then go out and do that harassment. Although, as mentioned, it's likely these were quite different parties due to the altering motivations and goals that would come with it. On top of this, parts of his video seem to encompass points even more general, attacking YouTubers who have spoken about him, using video titles to reference creators like Kappa Kaiju and Thaf9, while calling out their approach to making their videos.
Channels that are dedicated to ridiculing and shaming other people. These YouTubers make money by degrading, debasing, and defaming others. Eventually, these YouTubers will hear what the gremlins are saying about you, and then they will start making videos about you. It doesn't benefit them to portray you with accuracy and honesty. It benefits them to exaggerate your flaws and depict you as a cartoonish caricature of who you really are, because that would be more entertaining and will result in more clicks and views, maximizing their ad revenue. If they really were interested in telling the truth, then they would contact you directly and ask you for your side of the story. However, none of them will ever do this.
I think ultimately the problem with this video and the problem with all of this drama is that he skips a key part of responding to drama, and it's ultimately why he ended up in this mess, and that is evidence. I know people like Kappa Kaiju and Thaf9. They may not be gods or gurus. They may not be the all-seeing eye. I'm not either. But they don't go out with the intention of crucifying people. They go with what they're given. And at that point, they had very little from Yandere Dev. You can't just say, oh, if they really want something, they should email me. If you're not prepared to put something out there publicly, why should they trust you in private with it? I've trusted people in private before, and it has cost me. If you don't have anything publicly revolutionary to say to the drama, don't say anything at all. Yandere Dev always wanted to talk about it, but never had anything to actually say. Unfortunately, his audience recognized that, because at the end of his hate and shame video, he conducted a poll asking whether he should make more videos regarding this issue, oh god, or whether he should leave it behind and focus on the game. People voted pretty conclusively for the latter, the game. I think that's something of importance to note regarding this video. It is once more an appeal to his already existent audience on what he should do about this drama. If you don't like Yandere Dev, you're not gonna like this video. And boy, a fair few people did not. There were a load more criticisms about him deleting comments, including this video which shows them being removed in live time. Once again, even mild ones. There was a person who claimed to be the original artist for the video who had their own comments to make about the dev's behavior. Ironically, yet unsurprisingly, this video about drama caused more drama. I'm not going to rule out the idea that Yandere Dev may have experienced some legitimate harassment at the hands of trolls, and he has regularly cited this as the reason for why he has behaved in a rather erratic and even toxic way himself. Nonetheless, I feel that this can only be used as a defense up to a point, because his short-tempered demeanor was existent prior to the escalation of the drama that he argued to be engaged in, and his behavior has extended beyond the erratic and emotional into the calculated. It just reaches a point where you line all the drama up and it becomes hard to say that these incidents are as isolated as he claims them to be. I don't doubt that Yandere Dev probably had many positive interactions with his audience, and I'm not going to argue against that point, but even in context with Yandere Dev's greater character, the negative interactions held a significant frequency and relevance to the discussion at hand. A lot of the video was once again focusing on what he was experiencing rather than an actual response to the points against him, and maybe we would have received a more concise response if people had voted for it. But I don't know how he would respond to the various criticisms that escalated throughout the year, such as the volunteers who claimed he wasn't treating them well enough, the Discord users who claimed he just spontaneously banned them for no discernible reason, the people he flipped out at over email or whatever other communicative mediums. Since then, he has reiterated the idea that the harassment was what caused him to behave in such a way. If he believes the harassment placed him in a negative state of mind that predisposed him to behave in such a way, then what else would he have had to say in additional videos? I think for the benefit of him, his audience, and for anyone involved, it was best left there. So what has happened since then? Well, the only real point of interest in this is what is known as the debunk page, which provides running updates to criticism that he's been receiving. It's certainly more nuanced than his previous responses, and one thing I did appreciate was that he seems to recognize those who are frustrated with the game's development in a nuanced way, though I'm not sure how he treats that attitude publicly. And I do feel that such an approach is prone to miscategorization, and I'd stress that it's always best to side on the benefit of the doubt when dealing with certain criticisms. As you, the viewer, you are more than at liberty to check out these responses, as they're probably the most composed Yandere Dev has been, although I would stress that many have taken issue with them still and made videos of their own. I find the response page rather defensive, and although definitely a bit more refreshing, it's not a significant deviation from his old narratives that I would still personally take issue with. The point is, when dealing with drama, if you don't have anything that's going to turn perspective on its head, particularly when your content is being well received otherwise, it's not sensible to make videos obsessing over the situation. In a Discord post, he said that everything after this was going to worsen. First a 20% dislike bar, then a 30% dislike bar, then 50%, 100%, 1000%. Everything was going to fall apart and the game would be cancelled and no one would support him anymore. But wait, it didn't. Why not? Let's end this. Yandere Dev acted like he was on the verge of losing everything, yet even at its lowest, his videos were backed up by a strong, dedicated audience. There are only two ways that losing momentum of his size could happen. Firstly, if someone makes a well-written, devastating exposed video or post and completely turn public perception on its head, or if people in general become disillusioned or bored as a whole and stop supporting. The first one didn't really happen. The only well-organized videos were fairly mild-mannered, and others were just not well-produced enough. So maybe it's the second, but that didn't really happen either. There were disillusioned people, but not that many of them, and even fewer who were actually taking part in any of the stuff that he accused people of. People who want to spread criticism of your game or hurt your image probably aren't going to be the same as people who want to harass you, because that would compromise their own point. Providing that happened, that was likely mostly trolls who latched onto the dissolution as an excuse to cause havoc. A lot of attention on the drama was generated by Yandere Dev himself, and although the minority was quite vocal at points, its reach was limited to certain domains, only being boosted when Yandere Dev would respond himself. Let's be clear, the people who said shut up and focus on the game were doing Yandere Dev a massive service, and he should have listened sooner. For a bit, it did tail off, but it flared up again at the start of 2020, with what seemed to be more completely unnecessary drama. Yandere Dev placed his Discord server in a position where you pay to message due to an alleged number of raids. And although it's his server, once again, it seems like a bad thing to be managing himself. Someone tweeted out an interaction where they messaged him suggesting technical changes that could prevent raids while also maintaining activity, which of course there are multiple. You turn off link embeds, turn off images, slow mode, strong moderation team, IP banning, blacklisted words, and I hate this discussion because eventually when this guy clearly presents a load of solutions and rebuts Yandere Dev's comments, Yandere Dev just turns around and says, actually, you don't get it. No, my friend, you don't get it, and I wonder if you'll ever get it. If there are technical solutions to a problem, you can't appeal to some greater level of understanding which doesn't exist. Some people might get past 1 or 2 blocks, but Discord has a load of settings and bots that can be used to prevent such activity without using a paywall, which is what it is, no semantics. He did open up again, thankfully, but Jesus Christ, this drama has turned the Discord into a bit of a punchline, with people speed running it. People see this stuff as funny. Yandere Dev doesn't, takes it very seriously, and then people meme it more. It's a cycle. In a now deleted tweet made in January 2020, Yandere Dev also alludes to taking his own life due to this harassment. And without sounding like Tyler the Creator, and with all respect the fact that online work can be extremely stressful, he needs to take a step back from the internet and stop engaging in it to the degree he does. Add this to the claim that he's making less than minimum wage right now, which, although I personally find to be doubtful given his revenue stream, if true, I have to wonder what his motivations even are for continuing at this stage. There are so many posts of him involving himself with drama, DMing people, long messages, interviews, some petty arguments. I don't know if he thinks he needs to have this interaction to maintain interest in the game. Maybe he's won people over in the DMs, he probably has. But so many times, it just gets published and shows him as someone with an inability to communicate with basic criticism in spite of him proclaiming his proficiency. It's like Yandere Dev has this almost parasitic relationship with the internet. He sees it as the only way of maintaining the development of his game, and yet he has so much drama and conflict. He thinks he's attaching himself out of necessity rather than desire, and this leads to completely destructive behavior which he feels he has to suffer through, but by proxy of that, makes him a victim. On the other hand, Yandere Dev's critics view this victimhood as being exploited at every opportunity in an attempt to blanket harassment with legitimate criticism, and Yandere Dev's continuous failure to deliver a finished product which for many should have been delivered a long time ago. If you're a fan, then you may well sympathize with him, but few would disagree that a lot of this has been avoidable. And people have still been contacting me about it. I wonder if it's because people want my verdict on the actual progress of the game. It's hard to say. Yandere Dev now posts update reports, but they don't show anything too radical. People are still waiting on the character Osana. He seems more focused on other developments before moving on to that, and it's obvious the video game is not going to be completed by the end of 2019. Given his commitments, that will likely disappoint people. By the time many of you are watching this, it'll probably be 2020. Development still seems relatively slow, there are probably people impatient with the progress, but Yandere Dev at least has probably learned not to make promises he can't keep. There's no sign of the crowdfunding project yet, so I guess we'll see how that will be received in due time. The video game itself seems like an exhausting venture given Yandere Dev's desire to retain a lot of control. He clearly feels a commitment to finish it. He doesn't want to give up control given his investment. It's the sunk cost fallacy. He has sunk an investment in and he isn't willing to give it up or compromise easily on a creative vision in the hope that he will get there, and he might get there. At the same time, continuing this will undoubtedly be a draining endeavor, and I think it's a justified concern to posit whether the game will ever be finished given the scale and ambition. I'm not here to fully write anything off, and I don't think it's a bad thing to follow if you're just interested in watching the development, which I think is where a lot of his current audience stands. But I'd advise caution in investing. With the current trajectory, it's a risk you'd have to accept. The whole situation became weird to follow for me, because on the one hand, Yandere Dev seemed to acknowledge that the people who may be rather extreme in their behavior towards him were part of a small minority, and yet he dedicated so much time and attention to them, often causing a Streisand on the issue. He said that he was okay with criticism if it was delivered in a constructive way, but constantly censored public criticism regardless of tone, implying that he perceived even well-delivered criticism in bad faith. He acts like he wants to be out of the drama, but keeps involving himself in it. He constantly said things were taken out of context, but never really provided the context that would help his case out. I know it's a while back, but the example that still sticks out to me was the one regarding that clearly disgruntled fan who was annoyed about his mod. After going after him, Yandere Dev said he doesn't regret it on the corresponding Reddit post. In his debunked post, he said he often felt remorseful, but I don't think many people ever saw that. They just saw someone who was belligerent and arrogant. In reality, I think Yandere Dev was just so incredibly fragile over his public status that after the hostility backfired, he just went all out to suppress criticism. He's stubborn and a bit paranoid, and I don't think that's been to his favor, often ending up in conflicts with people in his own audience. As the hype slowed down and the Patreons dropped out, he became more frantic. Although the more public nature of Yandere Dev's involvement with drama has subsided, the censorship has not. There are a load of these situations, but probably my favorite was a post criticizing Corona-chan, oh god, being removed, with a person suggesting in the replies they should just look to this other post for a more constructive way to communicate this criticism. But that post has been removed as well. It seems rather authoritarian, with the dev and his admins becoming more and more obsessed with tracking members' movements, including their participation in other servers and subreddits to read their intentions. It feels a bit like a cult, to be honest, and I'm not going to leave many warnings in this video, because enough information is out there for people to make informed decisions. But this sort of behavior is going to create a bubble which is bound to burst, and it's a really bad idea. But why is this bubble being created in such a way? My hunch is that Yandere Dev had trouble distinguishing between fans legitimately frustrated about the development of the game and those he would class as concern trolling. People pretending to care about the game's best interest but having slightly more negative intent. He felt that he was being targeted, and he probably knew that well-worded yet more biting criticism would do more damage than anything else, so he tried to lump those people in with the harassers. The problem is that Yandere Dev often went for false positives rather than false negatives, which led him to lashing out and censoring people who may have genuinely cared about the progress of the game. 2015 and 16 definitely saw controversy coming from his own attitude. 2017 saw the exposure of certain technical failings, and 2018 saw an escalation in the arguments, frustration, and angst both sides had, amounting in an eventual burnout of the drama when the fans simply told him that enough was enough. Now in 2020, I guess we'll see how it all progresses. Do I think he's a bad person? I don't know, but I do feel his arguments regarding the progress of the game and his abilities were pretty poor. I also think his time management was exceptionally bad. I'm not sure if he knew they were, or he genuinely believed that the game's complexity justified the amount of time he had taken on it, but if he'd spent half the time arguing that he was working on the game, well, working on the game, he'd probably get a lot more done. You have to accept that there will be people who will go out of their way to hate you. Does it make it right? No. Does it mean you should become equally invested in it? Also, no. I'd also say that a lot of people had completely valid quarrels with him, and although his intent may not have been outwardly malicious, it doesn't undermine the grief caused by belligerence, rancor, or any other behaviors that can be attributed to this curious character. I'd say it's probable that there were some people looking to stir stuff up, but it's only because sharks smell blood, and when some of Yandere Dev's behavior and responses started coming to light, they saw a guy who they could bait into lashing out and decimating his own image even further, and Yandere Dev just could never understand that. You probably have forgotten when addressing his "What's Taking So Long" video, I said there was one other option that we'd get back to. Well, let's talk about it. Actually, I'll let Yandere Dev talk about it.
Presently, Yandere Simulator is my full-time job. I get paid to work on it. As long as I'm getting paid to work on it, I feel obligated to pour every second of my life into it. As long as I'm getting paid for my time, it's perfectly fair for people to complain if I don't make timely progress on the game. But what if I wasn't getting paid to work on it? What if I closed my Patreon completely? Then I could downgrade Yandere Sim from a full-time job to just a hobby. I would have no obligation to work on it for any longer than I feel like working on it. I would have no reason to give it any more attention than I feel like giving it. I would finally be able to play video games and watch anime again. Nobody could call me lazy anymore. All of my problems would be solved. But all of my fans would hate me. Someone else would develop a Yandere-themed game to take the place of my game. I would fade from memory, and all of the work I've done over the past 3 years would be for nothing. It's tempting to downgrade Yandere Simulator to just being a hobby so that I can take my life back, but it would probably be a one-way street with no turning back.
Now, aside from the fact that he's playing Beethoven again, dude really likes Beethoven, it may be too late now. But in 2017, this was the best option in my opinion. This was the option that if I was a fan, I would have voted for. It's his choice, but if he's as pressured as it appears, passing it on wasn't a bad idea. I think the main concern is that it's a decision that he would not be able to revert. Maybe he wants to prove people wrong by finishing the game, but back then I think a quarter of his audience understood. I tell him that he shouldn't listen to polls alone, but he went with the option that only 5% of the audience voted for, so I can't really say he did. Yandere Dev sees the source of his life in this community. That's the thing, there's more to this world than a community. I get there's a concern that you fade from memory, I get it too, but this is no way to be remembered. Yandere Dev and his game Yandere Simulator is the perfect example of a social media propelled video game when everything goes wrong. The obsession with hype over practicality, the motivation to keep it online, the lack of expert consultation, the lucky developer who was ill-prepared, and his volatile involvement with a passionate audience. It led to criticism which then snowballed and led everyone to lose out. And without his fan base just telling him to stop, it probably would have gone in the direction that he said it was going to. This current route seems to be less destructive, and I am grateful for that. But I wonder if he's really learned from his mistakes, or if he just learned to hide the glaring flaws a bit better. Only time will tell. For now, he should be grateful that he has a relatively committed and open-minded audience. In spite of all the antics, he's still doing okay, and if I were him, I wouldn't take that for granted. For any other creators / wannabe game developers, take this as a cautionary tale. Regardless of who you think is right or wrong, there's a lot that can be learned. Don't let YouTube drama cost you your life passion. It's not worth it. And don't think that everyone is out to get you, even if it may hurt. I hope the game is worth it. First things first, make sure you go and check out Faf9. He does great video essays on games. I love his work. He's got a great energy about him, and he's such a lovely guy too. I can root for that big time, so definitely go and send him some love because he's done a great job here. You know, I can't thank him enough for coming in and filling in a gap that would have taken me a lot of reading to get to grips with. So thank you on that front.